What's going on, everyone? It's Nina Infinity. Welcome to my channel on this Sunday. We're going to be reviewing Picard Season 3, Star Trek Picard Season 3, 3 only, because that's the one that matters. And we're going to start today by introducing the panel, the lovely panel that is with me. Some other folks will be joining us a little bit later. But for now, we decided to start the show because you're waiting. You're waiting for us. So we're here. And I'm here today with my fellow content creator, Nerd Cookies. She's here. Hello, Nerd Cookies.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Hi. Welcome. It's been a minute since I've seen you. How have you been?
Doing great. And thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some Treks in some positive ways for once.
I know. It's been so long since we could talk about anything good, it seems like. So I'm really glad you're here. For those of the people that don't know in the chat, tell everyone who you are and where they can find you.
Sure. Yes, Nerd Cookies is my YouTube channel. I cover sci-fi and fantasy, news and lore. You'll find a lot of Dunes, Stargate, other various forms of stuff. So yeah, if that strikes your fancy, yeah, you can check me out there. Also, just launched a new Patreon. It has some exclusive perks for members on that. And you can follow me at Twitter at Nerd Cookies for my more spicy takes.
Nice. Yeah. Her links are in the description, except for your Patreon, because I didn't know you have one. So if you drop that
It's
link
fairly
in the
new.
private chat for me, I can add it to the description as well as get my mods to drop that for the Patreon one. But there we go. But make sure you are subscribed to Nerd Cookies. And we also have the very lovely person that I haven't seen for like forever, like since 5 minutes ago. Script Doctor is in the house. What's going on, Script Doctor?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here and talk positive about Trek for the first time in 14 years, I think.
It's been a while. It's been too long. Script Doctor, for those that don't know, please tell everyone where they can find you.
You can find me on YouTube here at Script Doctor PhD. I will have, I just had a video where me and a legendary sketch comic, Paul Chato, had a conversation about comedy in film and television. So you can go check that out. That dropped yesterday. And I also have a Twitter at Script Doctor PhD. And I too, like my compatriot Nerd Cookies, started a Patreon where I do written reviews, early access to videos, and discounts on my screenwriting consulting packages for any of those that want to better their creative outlets and get really constructive notes that aren't people yelling at you and aren't people trying to push an agenda. Just good old fashioned, this is how we can write better for you type of deal.
Excellent stuff. And I see Darren already beat me to it. That's how amazing of a mod Darren is. But I also dropped the Patreon. I think I spelled it wrong, but that's fine. All right. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. And in the chat, please make sure you smash the like, share the stream, tell everyone what's going on over here. And just so you guys know, this is going to be a super spoiler review and discussion. So if you haven't seen it and you are wanting to see it and you don't want it to be spoiled, go and watch it before you watch the rest of the stream. Or if you're someone who's like, you know what, I really don't care that you're going to spoil it for me, that's fine. You're in the right place because it is going to be spoiled. But so to begin, I think how we should begin is kind of explain our Star Trek experience first, and then kind of go into how much of new Trek we watched, and just go into, what brought you into season 3 of Picard. So, Script Doctor, please let everyone know what your experience with Trek is, if you've experienced new Trek, and how you got to season 3.
Well, I was shown Star Trek on television when I was 2 years old. We're talking the Kirk, Spock, and McCoy stuff. And I had just started learning to speak, and I really liked it because I liked the lasers, the lights, and the creatures. And then my mind blew up again when that fall Star Trek The Next Generation appeared. So I had 2 hours of Star Trek a day. And for a kid that young, It's like a
Mhm.
lifetime. You're living in this for a very long time, and it was the coolest part ever. I really liked it. Wanted to be a Starfleet officer when I grew up. All that type of stuff.
Oh.
Fell in love with the movies. Got to see Final Frontier, Undiscovered Country in theaters, and then of course, as I got older, I watched all the TNG films in theaters. Not too impressed with Generations, but all the other ones I enjoyed for what they were at the time. And when I started getting into screenwriting, one of my goals was to work on a Star Trek show for two reasons. One, exploring telling great stories with sci-fi veneer over it, good analogies to universal issues of our own species. And the other part was that the fan base was so wonderful. Like
Oh.
I've never been to many Star Trek conventions, but the conventions that had Star Trek panels and stuff, all of the people that were fans there loved it meticulously. They had their criticisms, but they're always very constructive and informative, and it came from a place of passion. And it's
Mhm.
like you want to be a part of this. You want to be able to contribute to the lore so that they can relish it, and then you also want at the same time for them to correct you when you make a mistake because you don't want to, And I just want to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And my internship that got me started at Paramount Studios was part and parcel with a spec script of Star Trek that I wrote. And
Ooh.
along with my normal application, because this was back in the early days of email where you still had to physically mail stuff to the studio.
Mhm.
And that got me started. I wrote a spec script for an original Star Trek show. And they liked my application. They really liked the script. They hired me as an unpaid intern on a 6-month contract. But the way the industry works is that after 3 to 5 weeks ish, you get hired and you start making money. Unfortunately, for myself, my internship happened during the Viacom CBS split.
Oh no.
Program, and me and a dozen other young writers all were sadly discarded midway before we got employed, and even some of the people that we worked for had to find new jobs. It was a rough go,
Oh,
but that
that's
Star Trek got me, my start from fan to writer to professional screenwriter that I am today. And nothing has hurt me more than the treatment of the franchise since 2009 and on.
And what is your experience with new Trek? Like, have you seen every single series? What have you seen? What haven't you seen?
Okay, so I've seen bits of Prodigy. I've seen the first 3 seasons of Star Trek Discovery.
Ugh.
And I believe I reviewed. I had to stop reviewing season 2. 1, work was picking up, and 2 was really, really a slog. But I did review all of season 1 of Picard. It's like around 7 hours in total content
Yuck.
of how horrible that show is, just on a writing standpoint. I don't even delve into the politics.
Sure.
And that's what I try to avoid. It's like, listen, you can have whatever politics you want, just don't let it affect your writing.
And then you see Stacey Abrams coming out of that ship, and you're like, "Oh my god, I don't know where to go with this."
Yeah, fake governor-elect, fake president of the Federation or Starfleet or Earth or whatever. But regardless of that, like it's been tragic to see this happen to Star Trek because it's lost its way. The people that write it, I was having a conversation which will be released in a week or two on my channel. People that write it, I don't think they've ever taken anything apart before, like a toy or a microwave or a vacuum cleaner, something that kids would do out of curiosity.
Yeah.
Because it's all everything external. It's all superficial. And I had all my reservations for this 3rd season of Picard until the first thing that piqued my interest was that Terry Matalas was the showrunner who wrote 12 Monkeys. He created the show, and then another showrunner kind of showed him the ropes for the first season. Then he took over from season 2 to 4.
Didn't you also tell me, or maybe I'm mistaken, but wasn't Terry also an intern on Star Trek? Like, didn't he start out?
He was an intern on Deep Space Nine in post-production, and then he kind of worked his way through being assistants to various writers and so forth, and worked his way up, got to write a little bit on Voyager and Enterprise. So he got his start with Star Trek too. The lucky sod lived in the United States, so we didn't have to go back to Canada from time to time.
Oh, that's funny.
but yeah, like he got it started too. But that piqued my curiosity. But at the same time, it's like how much could he do, given what's happened already with Star Trek. Some of the other writers on seasons 1 and 2 that I'm familiar with their work are pretty decent, but then they turned out Picard seasons 1 and 2. So I wasn't sure. And it wasn't until Robert Meyer Burnett told me that it's great, and that a relative of mine who works in post-production also told me it was great. And he allowed me to see the first episode early, and then offered for the rest, but I refused because, one, I didn't want to compromise their position, and two, I kind of wanted to see it week by week as it was intended to get a better sense and objective take on it, and that's how I got here. And I have a number of issues with the season, but overall, it is a vast improvement of what it is, and far closer to what the spirit of Star Trek.
And you saw season 1 and 2 as well?
Oh yeah, boy, did I ever see 1 and 2 Picard.
Okay. Good man. I can make it that far.
Yeah. Okay, well, there you go. There's a script doctor's background on Star Trek, and now Nerd Cookies. So, what is same question? What is your background, and how did you end up with Star Trek the Picard season 3?
Probably more towards my adolescent years is when I really got into it myself. My parents, of course, were fans of the original series, and but for myself, I started to become passionate about it probably around the DS9 years, because that's closer to where my time. And then would just rewatch episodes. TNG and DS9 and Voyager are my favorites.
DS9
probably
my
DS9
favorite.
a little bit. Yeah.
Yes.
And yeah, I love the classic Star Trek episodic storytelling more. So it's very interesting now how that's changed. But with Picard season 3, I feel like it does work for this particular story. The serialized continual story throughout, and with just 10 episodes. But I do wish that we would go back to the 24 episodes.
Oh, me too. Me too.
Because I feel like that's such rich history, and that's what actually makes this season of Picard so special. I think it's such a and almost like a Return of the King fashion. And so yeah, so it's of course important to I love the William Shatner movie. I love the Undiscovered Country, I think, is my favorite of those. And then Voyage Home is my just second favorite, maybe. Love First Contact. And so those kind of vibes kind of carry over, those First Contact vibes in this one.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay. So that's kind of basic.
Okay. And then did you watch what about New Trek?
New Trek.
What is your experience?
So I don't know if I ever really watched Discover. I think maybe I started watching the first episode, but I didn't like it or something. I don't even know if I finished it. I just didn't like it, and mostly I just was reading episode reviews before I would kind of dive into it. And what I was seeing was just horrifying, especially when it comes to the violent nature. That was so when I was reading about that, I'm like, okay, this isn't for me. I don't know what's happened. So yeah, I just kept reading more and more about it, and like I don't want this ruined for me. So I didn't watch Discovery at all. And I'm glad I didn't, because I don't know. But I was super interested in Picard, and obviously these are characters that you have a special attachment to. So I was more interested when that was announced, and the marketing seemed promising. But the first I can't remember if it was the second episode where I stopped watching. I just couldn't go through that same experience again, like seeing your beloved characters be tarnished, this beloved universe. I've already been through that with Star Wars. And I just couldn't do it again. I couldn't do it. And what I heard about what happened to Icheb, and I couldn't even watch. I watched some clips very briefly. I couldn't stomach it, what they did to this character. So yeah, I could not continue on with that, knowing that that was going to happen in the following episode. So I just stopped there.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, and same thing with what Script was saying. I was hearing really good things from people that I trust
Mhm.
about this season. So, and we knew that all the cast was coming back. It really seemed like a total reset.
Yeah.
Just Picard and Riker, and I think the entire cast was basically replaced except for Seven and Rafi and um yeah, just a few others. So yeah, it's just total
Mhm.
reset and just more and more information that seemed very promising. So yeah,
Mhm.
checked it out and it was worth it, turns out.
Yeah, it really was. And as for me, my experience is a little bit a little bit different than both of yours. I got into Star Trek a little bit later on in my life. I was definitely kind of I I didn't like Star Trek when I was little. I thought I thought everybody who liked it was nerds. I was one of those girls. I was like, ugh, like Star Trek, gross. And then I found, well, I was like more of an anime geek than Star Trek in general. And then I met my boyfriend, who is my husband now, but my boyfriend at the time, he was a massive Trekkie. And I was like, oh, like, do I even want to date you? Because you're a Trekkie, like, gross. But he was such a Trekkie that it kind of turned me because I was like, well, what is it about the show that you find so fascinating? Let me watch some with you. And so I started to, and at first I couldn't really get into it. And then I watched First Contact, and that the one scene with Worf where that woman is like, when she goes on the ship for the first time, and then she's like, ah, because she sees the Klingon for the first time, and he's like, I am a Klingon. And she's like, okay, that was the scene that sold me on Star Trek because I felt like her. Because I was like, I don't understand any of these aliens and they're weird and like what is that, a Klingon, like what, like Frangie, what? And these things, I really identified with that character of being introduced to this whole new world. And then after that, I got into Trek. So then, of course, I started original series and TNG, and then DS9, and then Voyager, and then Enterprise. And DS9 became my favorite. I think I've seen DS9 at least 4 times, like fully through. Same thing with TNG, probably 3 times. I've watched DS9 more. Voyager, same, at least 3 or 4 times all the way through. Enterprise, I've only watched like once all the way through. I
I
didn't like the
forgot
ending.
about Enterprise. But
Enterprise,
yeah,
I've
I've
only
watched that
watched
too.
once.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I watched
I count Enterprise. I actually really liked Enterprise until the very last episode. Then I was like, this is. I'm just gonna pretend that last episode didn't happen, and that the second to last episode is the last one for me. In my head canon. But then then I started going into New Trek, and New Trek obviously started with JJ Trek, and JJ Trek was terrible. So I was like, fuck this. And I didn't like the new universe they made with, you know, Romulus is gone and blah blah blah. I hated it. I hated all of it. Oh, also Script Doctor, the funny part, because you said you like experienced all the movies about in the theater. The only Star Trek movie I experienced, which I hate myself now for, is freaking Nemesis. That was my only theater Star Trek experience, and I was like, this movie
Oh,
sucked. Like it was a terrible movie. So that was a big
yeah.
bummer for me. I was like, this is that,
That
and I
was
think that was the beginning of the end. Like Nemesis was,
well,
yeah.
they were trying to do a Wrath of Khan
Mhm.
storyline, but and this is the thing that always gets me is they have the Wrath of Khan like character archetype, that type of intimate nemesis in TNG, and that is played by ironically enough Denise Crosby, who left the show after the first season because frankly the scheduling was really bad. Like they would bring her in for 3 days where they just needed her legs in the shot. They didn't need her. And knowing actors and knowing production, I completely understand why she decided to leave, because you're wasting her time. She can't go do other jobs because she's a series regular, and they're bringing her in for her legs essentially. But they say, oh, but we might need you. Excuse me, we might need your face. We might need a wide shot of them. But they never ended up doing that. So she reluctantly had to leave on her own accord and own terms, and they killed her off. I don't think
Mm.
that was a smart idea, but they did it for drama. And then you get an episode like yesterday's Enterprise where they give you an alternate timeline of what if she didn't die. And then she goes back on board the Enterprise C to help them and whatnot. And as a result, she births a daughter who is a Romulan agent and ends up hating the Federation Starfleet and trying to get rid of it. And it's all as a result of Picard, who was trying to do the right thing, at least an alternate version of him, trying to do the right thing to preserve the Federation and Starfleet.
Mhm.
And Nemesis should have been Denise Crosby, Sela back, head of Romulus, doing something so that you can actually have that emotional bond. And how much more depth would it have been if Sela's actions led to the destruction of Data, knowing that Data and Yar had a very brief chemically
Tryst.
induced relationship.
Yes.
Like it would be very interesting.
Yes.
So yeah, they keep missing that opportunity, which bugs me because
Yeah.
aside from that, yes, Nemesis was
It was terrible. And then
Yeah.
I got into JJ Trek, hated it. And then I did watch Discovery season 1. So I watched Discovery season 1. And then around that same time, that's when I actually found Gary's channel and everybody, Gary from Nerdrotic. And of course, Anna, that Star Wars girl. And, I got to know this community. And Star Trek Discovery was awful. Like, it was probably one of the worst TV series that I've ever watched in my entire life. So I didn't watch season 2. I didn't watch season 3. I certainly didn't watch Picard season 1 and 2 because I heard about everything you said, Elaine. I heard about what they were doing with Egypt specifically. I was like, I'm not interested in any of this. I heard that they made 7 of 9 a lesbian. I heard that they turned Picard into a robot. I was like, what is this? What universe are we living in where this is acceptable Star Trek? And so when season 3 rolled out and I heard some of my favorite content creators praising it, just, up and down, just, it's great. It's fantastic. I was shocked. I was like, there's no way that this is going to be this good. There's no way. So I started watching it, especially because Anna was like, you need to watch it. Like, she was very adamant that I watch it. I was denying myself that for a while. There was a part of me that just couldn't do it, guys. There was a part of me I had a huge block, and Script can attest to this because I wrote about it constantly in our little group thread that we talk about. And I couldn't do it because I felt just like you, Nerd Cookies, so hurt from everything that I've experienced, from Star Wars to Star Trek to God, everything just seems to be getting destroyed. And I was like, I don't believe you guys that it's good.
We don't trust anymore in Hollywood to give fans what they want anymore.
Yeah. And
that trust is gone.
Yeah. So when I started watching it was really hard for me to at first get into it. But it finally clicked in for me around episode 6. So thank God I kept going because it wasn't like I couldn't quite get into it early on. But I'm glad that I did. And I did end up enjoying it immensely. So I thank everyone who told me to stick to it. Flash from Flashcast, Yellow Flash, Star Wars Girl, Gary, everybody, Script Doctor, everybody told me like, just keep going. Yeah, you, Elaine. I saw Elaine posting on Twitter, and I thought Elaine's on something. Like, she's on drugs. There's no way this is good. Like, she can't be thinking this is good. And, you guys were right. So thank you, everybody, for getting me to watch the show, because at least we got something good. Like, there was a good ending to all of this. Now, before we get into reviewing it, I'm going to get into some of the super chats because people have been so kind and generous. So let me get a couple of these and then we'll get right into reviewing Picard season 3. So Brett, thank you so much for the $20. As someone that stopped watching Star Trek around season 3 of DS9, this show was fantastic. I think Neurotic may have said it best. Season 3 of Picard is the movie TNG always needed. Agreed. And we were talking about it with Flashcast last night, and it's like it was kind of designed to be like a movie. It felt like a very long movie.
It's actually 3 movies. It's directly parallels Star Trek 2, 3, and 4,
Mhm.
beat wise. I'll get into that once we get into more of the spoiler talk. But when you listen to what I have to say at that point, you'll then click and be like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah."
But
Okay.
yeah, it very much is like that movie vibe, the story, how the storytelling works in this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the pace and everything is very movie-like. I agree with all of that. Okay, thank you so much, Britt Cormier. Thank you. And then John Burns is here and has a few membership or member or super chats. So we're gonna go through them all. And Brian, thank you again for being a member of the channel. You're awesome. So John Burns is here for 279 says there are those on the left retching at season 3. That's true. John Burns for 699. TOS was excellent from beginning. They showed diversity without needing to grind an axe. They had many characters on many missions, away missions, not 3. That's true. Then we've got John Burns for 699. Garrett Wang still insists that Voyager can do a movie, but the network didn't want humans to be featured in the series. Explains a lot. I don't know anything about this. Script Doctor, do you have any comments about this?
Seems odd. I
A
do know that.
Voyager movie or what?
Yeah.
What does he say?
I don't know if they could do a Voyager movie, because my understanding is that Paramount at least thinks that Star Trek and the Enterprise ship are hand in hand, and that's what's for theatrical. I don't agree with that. I think you can do other Star Trek films without other ships and other crews, but I completely understand they're hesitant because Paramount did something unprecedented. They took the original cast from the series and put them in a movie, and it ended up working. And rarely does that happen. I cannot even name a franchise off the top of my head that did that exact same thing, where you watch them on television and then all of a sudden they're in a feature film that has a larger budget and by comparison explodes at the box office. Granted, this was the late 70s and 80s, so 100 million even the box office take was considered a huge success at the time. So yeah, that was unprecedented. I would enjoy to see a Voyager film, because I think a number of the members of the cast and their characters kind of deserve better than what ended up happening with Voyager. I really liked Kate Mulgrew as an actress. I thought she's a great voice actress. She's done a lot of character work, and she could have been a fantastic captain. But for some strange reason, the writers keep having her vacillate between competency and greed and vindictiveness. And it's like, this is not the type of behaviors you should have for your lead character. I mean, she risks the starship to get coffee in a nebula.
Oh my God.
I mean, that is a plot point of a show.
Yeah.
So
true.
yeah, and then the horrible.
Although if you're a coffee addict like me, you're completely understanding of it. I mean, I was like, yeah, I'd do that.
Yeah, me too. I'm sorry.
I would do it. I'd be like, you know what? If we're stranded, like how many fucking thousands of billions of miles from the Earth, and I have to go without my coffee, no, we're all gonna die anyway, because I'm gonna kill everyone one by one on this ship in Minecraft. So we
I'll
might
make
as
coffee
well.
out of your bones.
Yeah.
I think COVID made me more sympathetic to that. Those little small comforts can help a lot.
See, that part, like, I completely understand it, but I just think for a Starfleet officer for that behavior, I think there would have been a more. I would say that Star Trek writers got a little bit diluted over the course of Voyager. I also have a theory that Neelix is based off of Brian Fuller. Don't ask me why. There's other stories that I can't share, unfortunately. Nothing illegal, just just quirks and things of that nature.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah, I would think a Voyager movie could be interesting.
I will say this. I was a little bit surprised with all the cameos, because we got Tuvok as a cameo too. And they did mention Janeway's name several times. So I kind of expected her to be a cameo at like the last like couple of episodes. I figured that they would somehow bring in Janeway. It just felt like a setup that kind of went nowhere because they
Well,
kept
she was
bringing her up.
supposed to be the sheer hubris admiral initially in season 1 of
Oh.
Picard, but
Oh, I'm glad
scheduling
he wasn't.
conflicts saved her from that.
Oh my goodness. Whew.
Yeah.
However, I think Kate Mulgrew could have said that in a way that would have been far more catchy and less insulting than because that actress is playing an original character, so she's doing her own thing. I totally get that. I can totally hear Admiral Janeway saying something like that to someone, because when you ticked her off in that show, you could feel it, and Kate Mulgrew really was able to convey that disappointed and insulted, emotions that she would get when someone would really just rub her the wrong way deliberately to get that rise out of her. But yeah, it would have been nice to see her. Again, the difficulties of this third season came due to the fact that they were shooting seasons 2 and 3 back to back. And while they were shooting season 2, Terry and his team were writing season 3. So they had to be ready to go the instant they wrapped production on season 2. And for those that aren't aware, the way Star Trek was shot in the 80s and 90s is they didn't have much of a break. So if on Friday was your last day of, say, episode 5, Saturday would be the start of episode 6. But the reason all the actors don't come in for every single day, they have cycles and schedules. But sometimes you get actors where, say, for instance, Patrick Stewart had 2 episodes that were Picard-centric back to back. Well, he would be working almost essentially 2 weeks straight. And then he'd be off for 3 days because they're doing B-roll or secondaries coverage for other characters for the following episode. And then he'd come in, and that's how they kind of did their weekends. The same thing was applied with how they were doing Star Trek season 3. Based on my understanding, is that as soon as they wrapped production on season 2, they, which ended, I suspect, ended on the set of the Stargazer. The next day they went back to the 10 forward set and started doing shooting the episodes that took place in those scenes, while they kind of redressed and changed up the Stargazer set into the Titan set, which just really was just displays and things. And then they would go back and forth. So it was a real touch and go production. And I understand exactly how those are intimately. So it's like, wow, these guys really managed to pull a rabbit out of their hat, given all of the issues, because they shot this, I think, almost 2 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, so it's quite an undertaking.
It really is. And the more you say stuff like this, the more I'm like, wow, that's like, because you don't really think about that kind of stuff when you're watching a show. Because I mean, I could just go on and on about the faults I found in it, but then you kind of think about this kind of stuff and you're like, wow, this guy really it was an uphill battle to get even what he got. So I think that's a really interesting, those are really interesting points.
Part uphill. I mean, on the actual breakdown of those things, yes. But Alex Kurtzman and Akiva Goldsman, they left to do other projects. So basically Terry had full reign to do whatever he could within the budget that he was given. And he wasn't given a lot to work with. In fact, they spent, I think, most of it on that reveal scene. The thing that's the background, that's a recreation of the Enterprise D bridge that they built themselves. They didn't go to a fan set recreation or anything like that. That was built there. And I think that would have cost them a pretty penny to do.
Worth every penny.
It is. Oh God, it was.
Oh, that was beautiful.
It was worth every single penny. In fact, I wish there was more of all of that. Like, I just wanted that to be the entire show. I was like, why couldn't just that be like episode 1 and then they just go on adventures? Like, that would have been so cool. But can't have it all. John Burns, thank you for the 279. Says, Nina, watch Ricardo Mandelbaum as Khan in Star Trek 2. I've seen it. John Burns for 699 at Script Doctor. Tasha Yar finally opens up to Worf about fighting a tournament, and I want to see Mo. Oh, crud, she's dead. Oh no, that's was it shocking for you guys when Tasha died? It was shocking for me. I was like, what the, like, that was unexpected. I don't know.
I don't remember exactly
when she went into like the fucking
Wait.
tar thing, like I was like, what?
Oh no,
She's
Riker went in
dead.
the tar. She was just hit by some sort of psychic energy, and just tossed her away.
Oh, that's
And
right. Yeah.
but like you never really saw regular cast members killed off in a television show, and it definitely they played with that because best of both worlds. People were wondering, is Picard gone? Like, is he
Mhm.
Locutus forever? What's like they did it with Tasha Yar just 2 seasons ago.
I know. That
Um,
was freaky too. I was like, oh, what?
yeah,
It's
but
crazy.
oh man, yeah, just yeah, they actually started getting closer to. It's kind of ironic. I think had Denise stayed with the show, she probably wouldn't have had as much upset with the whole. You're just bringing me in here to shoot my legs this week thing. But at the same time, we probably wouldn't get as much Worf and Michael Dorn as we had.
Oh yeah.
Because
Michael Dorn looked amazing in this.
Oh my god, he
It
was
was the best
so
he's ever
good.
looked.
He was the
so
best.
weird
He
to
was my
see his
favorite.
ears. We saw his ears for the first time. We've never seen Klingon ears before. Not like this. I mean, Chang was the one that I can think of
Wow.
first time we saw Klingon ears.
I want
It-
more Worf.
I know. I
Hopefully
want
he
more
gets to do
Worf.
something more.
Can we
Worf
just
is the
get
Fraser Crane of Star Trek. He's in everything.
can we just get a Worf spinoff and then like just Terry Metalis run
He
it? Like
wants to do one.
I just want Worf. That's all I care about.
He
The
wants
makeup's
to
a
do
lot
one.
easier too.
Yeah.
Doesn't
Who wants to one? Worf
Michael
or
Dorn,
Terry?
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I just
Been
I
trying to
want
get
him,
one going, but
I know, but I want him to do one with Terry or someone that cares about Star Trek, not like with Kurtzman, because that would be terrible.
yeah,
That would be
obviously.
terrible. Thank you so much, Mike, for the 5 says, I thought Picard season 3 was good until episodes 9 and 10, which I thought were really stupid. I
It's the opposite of you.
yeah, I really like 10. I mean, 9 was
I know where he's coming from,
It was
and I
annoying.
completely understand.
9 was annoying. I'm not gonna lie. Especially that is that the one where he can't like the door scene? Like it's like
Let's
I
see.
gotta open the door. It's
Yeah.
just like
It's the episode before the last one.
yeah, that was
10
episode
was the
9.
last one, yeah.
Yeah, that was dragged on for a while. I was like, oh my god, like just open the fucking door. Like, let's go. Here we go. Episode or Russell Hall for 2 says, it's too bad replicators can't make coffee. Wait. No, they
Got
didn't.
rationed.
They
They
did.
needed power, and
Yeah,
then
they
the
take
nebula
power.
was a source of power for them to get
Yeah.
for the replicator to make coffee.
Exactly. You can't have it all, Russell. They had a long trek home. I said trek. Okay.
Mhm.
That was not intended. 200 Watt Studios for 5 says Kurtzman wasn't involved with season 3. All Metalis, Kurtzman, and Akiva left to do other projects. Good. I hope they never come back to anything. Metalis got away with this despite them. Yes, he did good. He did very good. Now, one last thing I want to address is here. Trey Chester says, I really thought Nina would help bring others in line, but she's one of them. Okay. Just because I enjoyed some things in Picard season 3 doesn't mean that I'm excusing any of the past atrocious bullshit. Star Trek is still dead, guys. It's done. This was a last hurrah, and they gave us something good. And I'm not going to shit on people's enjoyment of things. And in fact, I'm really glad that I was able to find something good within this clusterfuck that it is, Star Trek. So I'm not going to deny that from people. I'm not going to deny that of myself. And I think that, it's very fair if you are like I was. I didn't even want to start the show. I completely get it because they fucking ruined it and they're pieces of shit and they should all just go somewhere else. But
and we don't agree like 100% either. So you're like, yeah, you said you were episode 6 is what, got you.
Mhm.
Episode 3 is what really kind of got me
Please talk about that.
excited.
What was it? What was it? Tell me more. Tell me more about this episode 3. Which
Do we
scene
want to
was
get
it?
into the
Yeah, let's go.
review?
We're getting into it.
So I thought the intro was intriguing. I like that we started with Beverly and how the message sent to Picard. It was very intriguing. There were elements that, okay, I want to see how this plays out. There were things that I wasn't happy about. There were things I was still irked by. Captain Shaw annoyed me.
Me too. I did not like him.
Seven annoyed me, I think, in that first one too. And was there other things? Yeah, it just didn't really like. I didn't really start to see where this was going until probably the end of episode 3. So I think by that point they had, well, first of all, there were some great performances. Even still that was still keeping me going. Like I really loved the Picard and Beverly interactions. I think that's some of their best performances as these characters, when they're talking about their son. So that was another. So yeah, we already know spoilers, but yeah. I was so intrigued by that, by this new character, by their relationship, just that bomb that was dropped and the fallout of that relationship is what was really kept me going, and just the conspiracy itself. I was interested. But yeah, it's not perfect. Those episodes were, didn't really have me immediately hooked. But so I think by episode 3 is where they were drifting and probably accepting that they were going to die in the nebula. I think that was episode 3.
Yeah.
They had made some mistakes and they were going to die, I guess. They're running out of power. And
that was
so
very Star Trek like. I was like, oh, this is a
yeah.
very Star Trek story.
So they took the time to like, okay, let's try to mend some fences here. And I thought there were some really good, the performances between Jack Crusher and Picard specifically were really good. So they were really trying to lay some groundwork there. So that's what I enjoyed watching, that part. But had the most Star Trekiest moment at the end where they come together, they do the techie science stuff, and they figure out how to use the nebula. There was some sort of power source or something that the nebula was emanating, and they used that to restore power to their ships, or I forget how exactly it went.
Script Doctor, how was it exactly? Do you remember? I don't remember either.
It's
a blur.
They basically opened up the vents of the nacelles and sucked in the energy as it was being expelled to recharge their systems and give them enough power to escape the nebula and asteroid debris.
There you go. That's what it was.
They saved the day with like this really techie solution, and then I think it was the birth of this nebula babies.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And I cried. I teared up a little bit on that. It was so surprisingly beautiful, because that's what the classic Star Trek was for me. Like this is why they explored the final frontier, and I thought that really had the spirit of Star Trek. And so when I saw that, I'm like, okay, all right. I'm feeling that classic Star Trek of what made me love Star Trek in the first place. So yeah, that's what kind of got me. I love that moment.
That's great. Script Doctor, what was there a moment for you that you were like, okay, this is it. This is good. This is good stuff. What was it, if there was?
Oddly enough, it was a lot of the stuff that Shaw said and did.
Okay.
I really liked the fact that we got an officer in Starfleet that was able to objectively look at Picard and Riker's career and say, yeah, there's some issues there.
Okay. I hated him. That's so weird.
You're supposed to, but the thing is, he's not wrong. Like even within the episodes when Picard had to challenge or break some rules, he wasn't happy about it. And he wasn't celebrating it. He was like, this is this position I didn't want to be in, and we had to do it because it's ethically the right thing to do. It captures the spirit of the Federation Starfleet. May not be part of the book, but this is where we've been pushed into, and this is where we're going to go. But Shaw doesn't acknowledge it that way. He just sees him as an abuse of power. But over the course of their story together, and he realizes that when stuff hits the fan, you've got to do what's best for the safety of your crew and your ship. And when
Mhm.
he gets injured and he immediately transfers command to Riker, that showed a sense of humility and responsibility. It's like, it's not about him, it's about everyone else. And that's what won me over. Plot-wise for this, I will say the entire plot for this season, as beautiful as it is built on a foundation of sand. And I can explain why as we go on later. But I will say the way the characters respond to this plot that's built on sand is I would say is very much in line to what's consistent with who they were when we were introduced to them in the TV series. And the results show for that. So I would say that this Picard season 3 is like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It should have fallen over and tipped, and it's a beautiful thing, but it hasn't, and it isn't going to anytime soon. But
yeah,
that's the way it is.
You would think it's very flawed. That's why I said that same thing on Flashcast, a similar thing on Flashcast, because I felt like it was like a junkyard wars situation where it's built from all these pieces of junk, and you think it's gonna be an ugly monster, but then you look at it and you're like, wow, they made that from junk. Like, it's like one of those. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Junkyard Wars, where they literally go and make like, a beautiful restaurant or something from like, junk from the junkyard. So it's a very interesting thing. And the Shaw stuff, I really like. I disliked that character so much at the beginning. Like, I was like, this is such a bullshit character. But by the end, I liked it. I was like, that's character growth. Yeah. I liked what happened with him. Now, we have another gentleman here. George, the Giant Slayer, is here. Hello, George. How you doing?
How you doing? Doing great. Sorry, I was a little late.
No, it's all good.
To see you,
now
good to see you, sir.
We kind of gave a little bit of a lowdown when we were doing our introductions about our, experience with Trek and what got us to watch Star Trek Picard season 3, like experience with old Trek, new Trek, and then, Star Trek Picard season 3, like how we got there. So can you give us like a really quick point form of what your experience is with Trek?
I started with original Trek because I got pneumonia one summer. I never seen it before. And it would play every Saturday and Sunday on this local channel before cable. And then that eventually led, I really loved it. Actually, I loved it so much that when the Next Generation came out, all my friends were going crazy. They got prepared like popcorn night. I mean, back then they didn't have flat screens, but the biggest television among this whole group of friends was this one dad was like an investment banker, and he had a 50-inch screen, except I don't know how to explain it. There was this device that was attached to it that had 4 huge lights on it that would project onto it. Like, I think it was red, green, something else. So anyway, they all got together, and when I had seen I saw it, because they even would schedule time. They're like, the commercial's supposed to play between the weather and this. And I saw it. I'm like, I don't want to watch this. I didn't want to watch it. I was like, there's only original Trek. To hell with this. So it was about a year until after they wouldn't shut up about it that I actually started watching it. So it was that. Watched all the movies. Always.
So you had do you have a favorite in all of the Star Trek? What's your favorite series?
My favorite series. I have favorites in each, because I love TNG. It took me a while, like I said, but eventually I love TNG. I love the original, but I put the original, then TNG, Deep Space Nine, and then Voyager. Kind of like, I really love the last 2 seasons also of Enterprise. Didn't love the first 2, but I just have favorite episodes among each. Like, I'll never forget my favorite that I've ever that I love, that to me that's emblematic of what Star Trek The Next Generation was. It's an episode called the Drumhead. I don't know if you remember that.
I don't remember the episode of names.
It was the episode with Gene Simmons, the actress, not the singer.
Yep. Yep.
What happened?
It was a political one. There was like a witch hunt going on, and
yes,
Picard
I have the clip. That's one of my favorite clips is from that. It's this one right here, the one with the lady. Yeah, she's great. Oh my god, I have that. Where is it? My Star Trek clip. I had that. No, it's not here. Of course, it's not here. The one when she's like, it's
when Worf gets all fanatical too, and he buys into her shtick.
Yeah, and like her father was the one that you
Was a
know,
big judge.
yeah, it was the big judge and everything. Yes, I know exactly what episode that is. It's a freaking great episode. Now, George, what is your experience with new Trek? Did you watch Discovery? Did you
I watched
watch
one
Picard?
episode of Discovery.
Okay.
I
Picard
couldn't
season
take
1
it.
and 2?
I did watch Picard season 1 too, which I was like, I'll never watch Picard again. But then I kept listening to Robert Meyer Burnett talk about it. I'm like, come on, it just can't be that good. But I respect the guy. Great mind, great reviewer. And then Gary was saying, you got to watch it. I'm like, okay.
Yep.
So when I watched I'm like, I'm going to watch it. So I watched the first episode and it pulled me right in because I was waiting for the other shoe to follow. Then I was like, okay, maybe it's going to be episode 2 is going to just where it hits us again. When I saw Rafi come back in, that threw me. I'm like, no, not
Rafi.
again. Because she stuck out to me like a sore thumb. It's like, I don't think she should have been in there. I was going to ask y'all, I was going to ask Script if that was like a contractual thing. Because I'm like, I thought this was the old, the next generation. Because putting her in there, I was like, it felt shoehorned in. Like, we got to do it. That's how I took it.
I
Her
think
interchanges. I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, I liked it when Worf came into the picture, not so much before that.
Yeah.
See, probably on the same point. But when I remember, what was the episode? Is it episode number 3 or episode number 4? It's when Jack turns around. I think he's talking to Riker, and he's like, yeah, that's he goes, that's your father. He goes, no, that's the guy with the positronic brain. I'm like, come on, can't we just ignore that doesn't exist?
Yeah, can we just
Can't do it sometimes.
I don't know why they brought that up. Like, why was that necessary? Like, I don't know why they threw that out there.
Well, I mean, the whole idea is that the thing that's around the plot is what killed Picard eventually, and that's why he's in that body.
Yeah.
Right,
I don't think
I know,
it's a great
but
idea the way they did it, but they had. Here's the thing: like you're stuck in a situation where you want to ignore what happened in the previous 2 seasons, but logically you cannot, because there's doesn't matter how small it is, there is a fan base there that will
really.
Yes. I mean,
You're painted into a corner narratively.
Yeah, you are narratively painted into.
I thought he did a decent job of.
Yeah,
they hardly ever mentioned it.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, like, that's me nitpicking. No, that's me nitpicking. But I just thought they would just completely ignore, because I'm like, there can't be a fan base for the show. I didn't think there was.
Well, I do know, like, for example, that was one of the things that I was like really turned off about, was that apparently she was lesbians with 7 of 9 in the previous seasons, or that at least that's what it was insinuated or something.
That was a result of basically just Jerry Ryan and Michelle Hurd deciding, hey, let's just hold hands here at the end. And then
was that it?
Yes, that was it. They just did that as a thing at the end of season 1. And for some strange reason, the writers, to show you how unoriginal they are, decided, yeah, let's run with that.
Oh my God. Well, in this season, though, they kind of retconned that. They were like, they broke up. And like, I was like, thank God. Like,
I actually did like that with Worf in that.
Worf
like, says in that moment kind of breaks the tension.
Level of awkwardness. Good. I'm glad you're staying behind.
Worf was so good. His lines.
I
love when he was snoring in the end. I don't know why, but that just got me. Just like everybody else, I was like,
that was such a good scene, because it kind of like demonstrates like how old they are now. So like, it's like old dudes, just whenever they sit down, they just like fall asleep, and it's like a comfy chair. So I was like, oh, that is so funny. And they just had like this big battle before. Yeah, you're right.
But you know what else is an allegory? A reference to the end of Hunt for Red October, when Alec Baldwin sits in the plane for the first time and sleeps. Because if you think about it, for Worf, when has he had time to sleep since we first saw him? When has any of the
not very
much time to sleep? Yeah,
it happened all like
over the course of like 4 or 5
no
days.
span of time. You know
what? That was one of my problems with it, actually, because they kept saying, and like the I think that was like it started from like episode 6 or 7 or whatever. They kept talking about like Frontier Day, and they're like, Frontier Day is only a couple of hours away, and then like all of this stuff happened, and I'm like, Frontier Day still happened like a couple hours away. Like there's just so much stuff that happened within that like time frame that I was like, they should have done a little bit of a better job with kind of like like, you know, the timing of Frontier Day between like how much they're talking about. Do you guys know what I'm talking about at
I know
all?
what you
or-
mean.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I thought it was a couple of days.
It's Frontier Day is 4 days away. Now it's 72 hours. Now it's 48 hours. Now it's 12 hours. Now it's 6 hours. Now it's happening. And now, I mean, they're doing the ticking clock, but the pacing around it didn't have the urgency that it would otherwise normally require. And I think that has to do with the fact that this season is significantly padded out, given the significant plot beats. I think this could have been done easily in a single movie, just shy of 2 hours.
Really?
You could hit all those notes and move it out. There's a lot of stuff going on in that show. I personally felt that the standout characters were Shaw and Sidney LaForge.
Oh yeah, I love Shaw.
Liked watching them interact and do things more than Jack Crusher. Not anything bad about Ed Speleers, who's the actor. It's just all of Jack's scenes, or at least the vast majority of them, are him telling us and Picard, the audience, who he is when he should be showing us who he is.
Right,
and Shaw and Sidney showed us who they were, and I understood them far more effectively.
I like Shaw. I didn't like him in the first 2 episodes, but I'm like, you're supposed to not like him. I mean, I got that.
Yeah.
I think I agree with Script there. You know what I think would be my worst and best moment? I hated the scene where Riker tells Picard to get off the bridge, like, you killed us. That I don't know why. It just took it. Like, I could feel that in my heart. Like, that's Picard, dude. You're number one. That's Picard. The way he spoke to him.
Yeah,
like, that
was annoying.
But do you know what his arc actually justifies it? Because up until that point, Riker has lost the wonder and magic of the galaxy. He buried his child.
Yeah.
And he tries to have fun with things, but he really just has lost his ability to care anymore. But when he comes back in the following episode and apologizes for the actions because he knows he's wrong, and he starts to come to terms with the fact that I am not the man I am anymore since I buried my son. And
but wasn't that the message?
He's not justifying his actions for it. He's just saying, I feel like a part of me is gone because of him. And that part's never going to come back again. And at the end of that episode, the part doesn't come back, but he has a new perspective on what the value is of why we're here.
But isn't that true? Oh, sorry, Nerd Cookies.
Oh, I was going to say, just going to say, sorry. Tongue-tied. That moment, I think, happened after the moment that I was talking about with the space babies, the birth of the space baby.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Like, he saw that, and that's what I liked about his character arc. Yeah, he started out that way, and then gradually as it went along, and when he saw that, it deeply touched him, and I think that's when he sent that message to Deanna, and that changed him, that changed his perspective. And that's another reason why I liked that moment so much, because that was like the Trekkiest thing, was that you see something in the wonders around you that, you know, had an emotional connection to that. So that's why that moment resonated with me so much, was also because of Riker. I think that was when that happened.
And I don't think he's had enough time. I mean, I love the idea, because it kind of makes sense a little bit to Deanna, because she was a fairly reckless in parts, where she was trying to get Riker to go through the grieving process faster, so that she could try and get back the man that she loved. And Riker didn't appreciate that, and justifiably so. And the fact that Deanna acknowledges that was a mistake, and just how desperate they were to try and deal with something very tragic that Deanna has a great deal of intimate knowledge of, because her mother dealt with the exact same thing. I mean, Kestra, their daughter, is named after Deanna's older sister, who died in a tragic drowning incident on Beta Z. So you see what's happening with these characters, and there's a number of beats that totally fit in line. Like, I completely understand like how people would argue, well, Riker wouldn't lose his cool like that. Riker, prior to his son's death, I can believe, would not lose his cool to them like that.
But that's my point. Is that what the whole? That's part of it, though, that they are all changed. They're not. Yeah. They're the same names. They have the kind of like the base character, but life has changed them.
Yeah, they've had 20 years of experience we haven't seen yet.
That's a really good point. That's actually something that I made a point to see, that there's some things in these characters that are maybe out of character or something, but still within that same spirit. Like it makes sense that Beverly, through her experience of whatever she was doing, I forget, but she's more experienced with tactical. Now she's
Mhm.
a mother, so she has other things too that might how she handled certain morality issues. But when her son was threatened, so there were some moments like Worf being more meditative or just some moments that were like different, from their lived experiences, but they
Mhm.
still embodied that spirit of who they were. They weren't unrecognizable. And when you compare that to Luke in the Star Wars sequel trilogy, just
Oh
completely
God.
Yes.
abomination of that character.
Mhm.
So just the comparison between that, like, yes, there's some differences here, but you can tell that's because of their decades, I guess now, experience in life experiences and how that's changed them, but
20
they are
years.
still the same people. You
Right.
still
Yeah.
recognize them.
See, that's
I
what was missing. That is exactly, Nerd Cookies just hit on it. That's exactly what was missing in The Last Jedi. It's like there was nothing when you had Jake Skywalker, as Mark Hamill originally called him before he was slapped, I guess, by the studio. There was nothing there that you could see underneath this grumpy visage of like, where's that eternal optimist, that hope? You could see it in the characters here, I think a little bit, until it fully formed in Picard season 3.
Yeah, it did. I mean, one of the things is that they asked the writers here asked the question, well, where's the safest choice to put these characters? Where's the emotional choice, and where's the logical choice, and how can we reconcile that? I really liked what they did with Worf, because he likes pacifism, but only because it's a means to kind of be more efficient with his warrior nature. It's like, what battle is worthy of a Klingon? And like, this is the type of reconciliation you can have with it, because towards the end, he's got his sword and there's a phaser hidden in the hilt, and Riker's all upset about that, but Worf's like, swords are fun.
yeah.
Like, that's, I mean, it's
I love
rare to
that
hear
scene
something of,
so much.
Because Riker couldn't pick. He's like, how heavy is this thing?
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
That was
and
such
the
a
thing is
good
that he's using pacifism in the way like an ancient warrior, like, or a veteran would. It's like, listen, having been in war, I would prefer pacifism as opposed to just charging into a fight just because. When Worf was young and on
Fight.
TNG, his first
Mhm.
instinct all the time was to raise shields and fire torpedoes. And even
Yes.
Picard has to ask him, like, why do you want to do that all the time?
Today is a good day to die. That
Yeah,
whole.
like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the thing is, he's this Klingon who's like, he's a
Well,
Klingon
he's
who has
old.
not died in battle, and he will die in battle because that's what Worf wants to do. But he's lived so long, he's like, if I'm going to die in battle, it's going to be a worthy one.
Right.
Right.
And every situation we've seen post them getting together, it's like, yeah, these are all worthy battles for Worf to go out in, if that were the case. And I think there's something clever to that. And what was also fascinating is they took a gag from Star Trek Insurrection between Riker and Worf, and they decided to run with it, because what we have now, finally, which we never had in TNG, except for, you could kind of argue maybe a bit with Data, but what we have now is a Bones and Spock relationship between Riker and Worf, where one's the straight man and one's the comic.
Mhm.
and the comic doesn't realize they're the funny one. And it's great, because now we have a meme of Riker who says, do you hear what you're saying? Like, that's a meme now. That is going to be used constantly
forgot.
all over the place.
You
I
know
might
what?
even use it when I do a video review with Kurtzman talking about Star Trek. Like, just hit him back with that.
Talking about humor, I was listening to Robert Meyer Burnett, who was talking with someone, I don't know who it was, 2 days ago, and he was giving some. He was talking about some scenes that he saw originally when he saw it before it was broadcast, and he says it was actually this really funny line that Worf gives, but it was Patrick Stewart. He said, "We really need to cut that out." The penis line,
the woman from Venus joke, yeah,
right?
Worf says it, and
there's supposedly that Worf says, "You mean penis?" and he's supposed to crack up laughing. I was like,
but I think Patrick Stewart was right there, because you can't really conclude Star Trek: The Next Generation on a dick joke.
Yeah.
Right, but
I'm so glad they didn't. Like, oh my God.
Like,
Our
I mean,
imagination can fill in the rest.
Yeah.
Right, but they were trying to say that because we've never seen Worf get a joke and laugh, that would have been that moment. But I agree with you. You couldn't have.
I think Data was more of a like I don't get humor thing, and they kind of did that with him too, which was good. But like the for me, that was one of my biggest gripes with it was the
Data?
modern speech.
Oh, I didn't like the cursing.
modern speech, like especially that one of the reasons I didn't like Shaw at all was because his character practiced a lot of the modern speech a lot. Like he constantly he swore several times.
That was odd.
And then there was a scene with Picard where he was like talking to his kid and he said stuff and I was just like, ugh, like it would take me right out like when they were swearing or saying shit or damn or like
Someone
whatever.
said fuck, didn't they?
He said
Well, there's only one F-bomb and it's from Patrick Stewart.
Yeah, that's what I remember.
I didn't like it.
And Shaw just had basically suburban Chicago level of lexicon.
Right,
but we're talking about 24th century characters and they're still swearing. Like I didn't like that at all.
For? That's the point.
No, I didn't like it.
Star Trek, you're right, Nina. It pulls you, it breaks that suspension of disbelief for that world. Like, why does anyone think that they did that? Is that to appeal to a modern audience?
Yes.
Has Terry explained that? Has he addressed that at all?
Well, he did say that he Patrick Stewart wanted to drop the F-bomb there to try to highlight
why
what's going in there. However,
and why would you listen to him?
Well, I mean, Patrick Stewart is also produced on the show, so he does have power.
Well, he also didn't want this to happen.
Right, he didn't. I know.
He puts the F-bomb in the wrong grammatical order when he says, it was like effing 10 hours or 10 effing. He doesn't say it properly because you're supposed to actually highlight it. It was like for 10. Yeah, it was like 10 effing hours or something like, or effing 10 hours. Effing 10 hours, I think it was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like,
it was
horrible. It's you do the numerical, the adjective, and then the noun or the verb or the adverb. And it's like, no, even they swear wrong in the 25th century. Like I like the fact that even though he did it, they did kind of swear wrong, except for Shaw. He actually used it properly. He used the adjectives correctly. But
it'd make more sense if they did something like Battlestar Galactica, if it was
like
make up other words, because the English language, I'm sure, has undergone many changes so far, and I'm sure it would have continued to do that. So to speak modern like that.
It is. I mean, the other part too is like the Battlestar Galactica frack. Whenever I hear that in a show that's not Battlestar Galactica, one, I know the writers only ever watched Battlestar Galactica. Two, I know the show is going to suck balls.
Oh my god! I still say frack when I don't want to say.
People can say it, which is
because it entered the lexicon.
It's really bad because that's one series influencing your entire writing structure. And a lot of the problems in a lot of the current science fiction we get are people trying to superficially recreate the tension and drama on Battlestar Galactica.
Gotcha.
So
Battlestar Galactica was it was a very human show, and they were trying to be professional and formal around it, but they had all of these petty, insecure emotions. And what do we get on Star Trek? Oh, we get a bunch of officers that are petty and insecure with all these emotions. And then every once in a while, they try to emulate what it is to be professional, kind of like what they were doing on Battlestar Galactica, even though Battlestar had an excuse. It was the last of their species on the run. They didn't have time for all the formalities. They had to do things and be human in order to preserve their species. In Star Trek, there's no threat like that for the crew of the Discovery or the Enterprise. Like, why would they be care about those types of things to represent their species? It's not. It's like, no, this is our job. This is what we do. Leave those petty issues at the door. We have other business, and you can put a pin in those ideas and pick them up later when we're not having to evacuate a planet that's near destruction, or we rescue a child that's going to be exploited in a plagiarized story.
I just don't like it. It takes me out. But I mean, the only one I didn't mind was actually that Riker scene where he's like, oh shit, I didn't realize how heavy these were, because it just like it came out. But even then, I was like, ugh, that's cringe. Another swear word. Like,
but it's also old man talk.
Yes, but no, because they changed. Like they're like to me, the idea of a 24th century old man like saying shit or damn or like whatever, it just makes no sense, because they're putting our like hours.
They're bound to have curse
Yeah.
words. They're bound to have curse words.
They
in
are, but
24.
think
Well,
of it this
and-
way: you're over 70, you're old, you're
You don't
tired,
give a
you don't
damn.
give a crap anymore.
Aren't you supposed to
Picard's
say
also
that?
drinking
Century.
whiskey, not Earl Grey tea. Now
You
he's
know
drinking
what?
whiskey.
Nerd cookies. That's a great point. That was another one that kind of really like got me. Like I was a little bit annoyed about that because I was like, okay, Picard's constantly drinking whiskey. We know he owns a vineyard, so he's like talking about wine, constantly drinking whiskey. I wanted him to say Earl Grey tea hot like at least once, and we
Yeah.
didn't get that. I was like, why?
He's not in charge of the ship now. He can have a drink now.
Retired admiral, he doesn't need to be sober.
No, but that ties into something that Nerd Cookie said a couple of minutes ago, that Patrick Stewart didn't want this to happen, and I had researched that a couple of weeks ago and a few months before, which I'm so amazed that this came together. I really didn't understand that Patrick Stewart did not want to have the whole group back together. I was like, why not?
Because Patrick Stewart's an asshole, and he actually hates Star Trek.
And it's
for-
Metalis that convinced him when he told him the story and how they were coming back. I was like, thank God he convinced him.
Well, the other part
Yeah.
too is, again, actors don't really watch their own performances, and they
Okay.
don't fall in love with the things that we as an audience love.
Don't they
And they learn the
understand?
stories through the script pages, and maybe sometimes they'll be there for a premiere screening of the episodes prior to it's being debuted. But then
Oh.
they're on to the next job. They don't have enough
Yeah.
time. They don't.
Or yeah.
So you're
Or
telling me
even if
that
they do
Brent
watch
Spiner,
it, it's
Yes, go ahead, George.
No, you're saying so that Brent Spiner and all of them, they don't sit back and go, I love Star Trek. You know, this is like they don't watch it at all.
No, you'll rarely find actors that watch their own stuff. Here's the
Not
thing,
for
though.
them, for the rest of
They
the
do
story.
love, like I've worked with Brent Spiner. He does love Star Trek. He loves the fact that he's on the show and did this stuff. He only remembers the episodes as an actor's perspective. So sometimes you'll say a name of an episode and he might not get it, but if you tell him what's going involved, he'll remember doing it. He'll remember what it is. He might not know exactly how it was cut together and what you saw of it, but he knows enough that he can hold a conversation. Same with a lot of other actors. I heard LeVar Burton can do that also.
But that's why I thought they would watch it script, because they work on it, so they don't get to see the finished product. I mean, like they were in it.
But it's usually out of scheduling because, again, they worked nonstop. So as I mentioned earlier, there's no break in production on a television series with 24 episodes in the 80s and 90s.
What do you mean there's no break? It's all year?
Means that on Friday, if Friday you are shooting episode 5, Saturday you're shooting episode 6.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nerd
Some
Cookies
days it'd be like Friday morning you finish shooting episode 5, and Friday night you start shooting episode 6. Like that's how it worked. It's you got to maximize the amount of hours you get out of your crew to get as much production done as possible. And so your cast and crew are on rotating schedules, so they have days off in between, but sometimes you don't always get that luxury, but they're constantly, it's like a machine. They're constantly going. They don't work 5 days and have the weekend off and come back, or at least they didn't in those days. Some productions have something similar to that now. But they keep going over and over. And I think, like most actors don't. The only actors I know of like within of contemporary television series that are actually starting to watch their show again is Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling from Smallville.
Really?
Oh yeah.
And
Wow.
I've peeked into a couple of episodes here and there, and it's fascinating because the actors have no clue. Like they know the audience loves it, but they had no clue really why. And Michael Rosenbaum is the type of guy who he's like a lot of fans. He's watching this. He's like, this is kind of silly and stupid, and this doesn't make sense. So why are we doing this? And I think I saw one episode where he calls Al Goff, and it's like, what the hell's going on in this episode? Like, and they're on the phone, and it's but that is a very accurate perspective of what actors are doing. They work so much that they don't have time to watch their own episodes, and on top of that, when they're off, they are either working on another job or they just want to get away from it to actually have a vacation and respite, and they don't care because
So they don't
what are they learning
enjoy.
that's new? They're not learning anything
I-
new. when
They
watch
don't
I heard the
enjoy it
same
like
thing,
we
George.
do.
I heard the same thing from like watching. I know you guys are gonna be like, "Oh my god, Nina, you're such a lame person," but I watched the Friends 20th reunion,
Oh, I didn't
and
see
they
that.
were like, they were talking about how like they don't watch. Like they were like, "We've never watched Friends." Like like even though all of the everybody else, like people like me, have watched Friends maybe like 1,000 times, but most of them were like, we've never seen a single episode. Like, it's like we've never really kind of sat down and watched the
Kind
whole
of
thing.
odd, you know.
Well,
It's
why
like
would they
you
have
have
to?
these
They lived it.
cultural, right? But they lived pieces of it, right? Like they lived an aspect of it from behind the scenes and putting it together, not the complete thing. You know, the music,
Mhm.
the whole
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Patsy.
they have
It's like
multiple
they're
memories doing the
missing.
same scene over and over again that we'll
Right.
never see. But yeah.
Right. That's what I'm saying. They're actually, in one way, missing out on some of these shows that were part of the cultural zeitgeist. Like they have their perspective, but not the fans who have enjoyed it. You know, who are big fans of it.
Yeah.
It's like one of my
They're
big
not
questions.
seeing it through that
not-
lens.
No.
Yeah, but
Now-
I'll pose this question to you, George. You make videos. How often do you rewatch your videos?
The only
don't.
time I've ever watched was in the first 3 months, so I could figure out what the hell I was doing constantly.
But
Because I'm like,
see,
I don't
but-
watch them anymore.
Exactly, and that's the
Mhm.
behind the thing in the back
Yeah,
of your
good
mind
point.
that's preventing you from rewatching your shows again is the same thing that's going on with actors.
Okay.
That's how it is.
Now, just to
Right.
bring it back to Star Trek a little bit, because we're talking about watching yourself and things like that. There was a scene, and this was this was the episode that got me, was episode 6, and I was like, Star Trek, I love it. It was a couple scenes in that episode. One of them was when they were going through and they saw Moriarty,
Oh, yeah.
come, which was a great cameo. I love that he was
I
there.
screamed at that moment. I
Me
audibly
too.
did.
Oh,
I
hell
was
yeah.
like, oh my God. Me
He
too. I
looked
was very happy.
amazing.
It was so
He looked
cool.
awesome.
And then in that scene where he's remembering what he did in the holodeck, and they're kind of like, they show him as a young Riker, and it's going back and forth. I was
I
like,
love that. Yeah.
oh, I was getting so
Original
emotional.
footage.
No
Yeah,
way.
the original footage with because it was in high def too, right? Like, so you're seeing like
It was beautiful.
it was
It
so
was.
gorgeous.
It was.
And then right after that, of course, like when they find data and they're going through data and lore and like the whole thing with that, which I had a little bit of a
Before
problem
and
with that.
Dr. Sun and all in one.
Yeah, I had a little bit of problem with the story of that,
Mm-hmm.
but I also enjoyed that part because I like the fact that they
Brought
even though
him
they
back?
retconned several of the stories, I love what they were doing with it. Because there was like the one part that got me was Spot, and he was like,
Aw.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
when he gave him Spot, and he was like, I was like, oh my God, Spot! Like, I was like crying. I'm like, oh my God. And
Funny
I-
because Brent Spiner hates that cat.
Really? Really?
He said it was the worst actor he'd ever worked with.
oh
Aw.
no, I loved him.
Well, it's
I
a
liked him.
cat. Cats do
cat,
what they
yeah.
want.
But you know that's interesting is that we got that Spot cameo when he was fighting with Lore, inside his mind, and we even saw Tasha Yar.
Yes,
Right?
and the little
Oh, yeah, yeah,
statue
yeah.
of her. I love that.
But there's one person we didn't see that I was waiting the entire season. I'm like, where's Jane? Where's Voyager? Where's the Admiral?
We
Scheduling
talked about that a
problems,
little bit
yeah.
earlier. Like, I was expecting to see Janeway because she got mentioned
Yeah.
a few times.
What happened?
But
I'm guessing scheduling conflicts because
Wouldn't
mean-
they schedule around? I mean, like get her because it's like she's important. I even expected where's DS9? I thought we'd see a couple
I
of
mean,
people.
I did love Tuvok though. I did.
Yeah.
not
Tuvok
like,
was
when
great.
Tuvok showed
Tuvok.
up, I was like, I did not expect that at all.
I was
no
really
name
hoping
was
like
cool.
Paris and Harry Kim would show up too.
Yes.
But
Harry's
Forever.
still an ensign.
But you know what, though, like-
Harry-
but you know what though, like I felt like you can't have it all, and this was a TNG thing, so
Yeah.
it's like we can't have like, okay, fucking Voyager and DS9 and fucking everybody.
Well,
Like,
because
it's
we have
just-
7 of
Yeah.
9. That's why it's like when you had 7 of
Yeah.
9, and you have 2. I'm like, where's
But
Janeway?
they did
Chakotay?
have that. They did have that moment though in the ship museum. I loved the
Mhm.
different ships that they were going through, and I think that was actually that same episode. Was that with
Yes.
the Section 31?
was
that all in one
Yes, the
episode?
Daystrom Station raid. Yeah.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. So there's so much was happening, and I love the way they incorporated. Like you could say, like, oh, it's just member berries. Like this is not member
loved
berries
it.
as far as my definition of what
Mm-mm.
member berries is. I think of like Rings of Power and how they used member berries was like trying to use scenes from Lord of the Rings in their own fashion to say, oh, remember this? We're doing we're
The
doing the
same.
same thing, and
Mhm.
hopefully you'll like it because I don't know.
That's member berries. What
I
Rings
don't-
of Power
that-
did. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
that's more
fan
in line
service
of my
that
definition.
doesn't contribute to the progression of the story. And
Exactly.
this one here did, because it's like, oh, we're just okay. We have to wait. We're killing a little bit of time. Let's take a look at these ships, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait, there's
And when they played
the
the
bird of
music,
prey from Star Trek 4. They
Oh,
Oh
yeah.
my god, the music.
was good.
That's
I'm
what.
like-
Did you hear that? I'm sorry. I was cutting.
No. Go ahead, George.
The opera, when we first when we have Worf, when Rafi's coming into the room and he's kind of doing those katas with the bat
That
left.
was such a
That
good
opera,
scene.
I was like, that's the opera from First Contact, where Picard was listening to it in his ready room, and he
Oh
was
my
like, before he's like, here we draw a line, here and no further.
Yeah.
You hear the opera when he goes mad and he starts breaking everything.
That
was
was
like, that's
one of
the
the
same.
scenes though too, George, that got me. That I had such a mixed reaction to that episode because Worf was in that episode, but that
Mhm.
also was my least favorite episode where I almost stopped
Oh, I
watching
love that
it.
scene. I love that scene. That was
But I love that scene too, and I was like, oh, I love this so much. But I
is that
also
episode 2?
yeah,
early
no,
on,
that
right?
was I think I was
Three?
episode
It's 3?
4.
I thought it was 3.
I don't know.
I
Had
it's
they
think it was-
reunited yet?
No, I think it was 5. Episode 5
Wait a
is
minute.
when
Okay.
they kind of get back, because
When he saves her, it's after the episode where he saves her. He cuts the Ferengi's head
episode-
off.
episode 2, end of episode 2 is when
So
he
it's
does
the
that.
next episode after that, because she wakes up and she's hearing this music and she grabs a pistol,
Yep.
which is on that side of the bed, and then she walks in and you see Worf in the dark, doing
Yeah,
the kata. That's 3, I think, or 4.
Yeah, like episode. So on my Patreon, I go episode by episode on this review.
Uh-huh.
One thing I noticed is that like episode 2, you could have broken up the plot points and put them in episode 1 and 3 and not missed a beat, because there's
Okay.
so little happens in episode 2.
Mm.
Yeah.
When I saw the Vulcan gangster, I laughed because it's like no Vulcan with
Would do.
logic would ever do what they're
Be a
doing, because
gangster. But I like the Ferengi one.
the Ferengi was cool.
Ferengi
I
is a
thought the
criminal.
Ferengi-
Yeah, they're criminals.
It looked like
I-
for Ferengi. Refreshing.
Mhm.
I thought the Ferengi was a woman at first because of the small earlobes. Because that's what in Star Trek canon, small earlobes mean female.
Female.
Ferengi.
Yeah.
So they should be
But it's not,
naked.
because it's played by the
Ulysses?
guy from 12 Monkeys, and so is his partner in crime.
Oh.
The Vulcan, I strongly hold that they should have been reversed roles,
I agree.
mainly because, and I say this not as an insult, this is kind of like a subtle term that is thrown over in Hollywood, but the guy who played the Vulcan, he's known as like the discount Al Pacino.
Oh, I know what you're
Um,
talking. Yeah.
He was in Arrow, and he's
in a lot of
bunch
stuff.
He's not given. He's a really good actor, but he's constantly given roles where he has zero chance to give his range. And I think if he played a Ferengi and he had to do like a high pitched voice and kind of be more sinister and tickish, that would have actually really exploded his career a bit more, because he's been working for like 40 years. And
Yeah,
I
he was in
agree.
Oz.
I
He
didn't
was
like
a
him as a
gangster.
Vulcan either. I was like,
he's talking real soft, and he's
Right.
trying to be
Yeah.
Pacino. He's trying to do it.
Mhm.
Hoo-yah! You know, and
HBO's
he's
Yeah.
Oz was his first role, and then he did Fringe. I mean, he just done a ton of stuff. Gang member,
Yeah.
criminal. But
Yeah.
what I found interesting was, do you think they pulled that from Strange Worlds? Because I watched it in the end to see, and I was like, I didn't like, because they had an episode in Strange Worlds where the
Strange
spot
New
of that-
Worlds?
yeah, Strange New Worlds. Sorry,
Oh.
Well,
that-
Strange
that
New Worlds was
stuff.
shot in Toronto, and they shot all
I
this in
hadn't
LA.
seen that.
The only reason is because they have an episode where the Spock of that series, right? He's engaged or married, and the woman he's married to, the Vulcan, is actually working with Vulcan criminals, like to rehab them.
Well,
That's what-
these
I
are
never heard of it
Vulcans that
before.
break that don't follow logic and do horrible things. And that's the thing. Like, there is no logic to crime
Right, that's-
unless, let's say, you have an infrastructure where the police are the most significant contributions to the economy, and in order for the economy to be stable, the police have to be working. So logically, you would need criminal element to exist to justify the existence of the police if that's going to be supportive of your economy. However, Kirk Acevedo's
Aceveda, yeah, that's right.
Acevedo's character says, in a utopian society, organized crime is the only logical action. It's like, well, no. One, Star Trek isn't utopian, even though many people mistake it for it. It's a post-scarce society. And two, you can't have a utopia if a criminal element exists. Therefore, you're a lot. It's like, it's basic logic. Like, it doesn't. And there was no way he would do it. It would be more interesting if he was a Romulan and doing this type of stuff, because Romulans are deceptive, and they've been a big player in Picard seasons 1 and 2. to a
Mhm.
degree.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think a Romulan would have probably served
Absolutely.
better.
But isn't that like the JJ Trek thing? So I was confused about that because is that not because Romulus is destroyed in this world? Are we not
No,
in
so
that?
okay, I understand.
That's
your
its own
confusion.
timeline still.
Because they
So-
did that in season
Right?
1. Didn't Romulus gone?
I'll clarify it for you this way.
That-
The Picard that we're watching is the
Mhm.
Picard of the universe where Romulus was destroyed, but Vulcan lives. The
Okay.
movies is where Vulcan was destroyed and Romulus will be destroyed. And Star Trek Discovery and Star Trek Strange New Worlds are part of the timeline where Picard is set. It takes
I'm
place.
so confused.
Oh,
So-
Picard. So is that
Look
the
at this one.
Kelvin
Ethan Peck-
timeline? Because they've split so many. Which is the Kelvin? That's the J.J. Abrams.
The Kelvin timeline is J.J. Abrams, and Leonard Nimoy is playing the Ethan Peck version of Spock.
Okay.
Not the Spock he did in the TOS, but because that's a different timeline. Ethan Peck Spock is a different timeline. That one grows old, tries to save Romulus. It gets destroyed. He goes back in time, meets Chris Pine's Kirk.
Right.
That's what that timeline. Those are
So the Picard's prime timeline.
no. Okay, Prime is a misnomer.
Say again. I'm sorry. I didn't.
The prime timeline is a misnomer. There's
Okay.
the original series timeline, which is from 1966 to 2005.
Mhm.
Then there's the Kelvin universe, which is 2009. And the prime timeline that's referred to in the Kelvin universe is Discovery, Strange New Worlds, and Star Trek Picard.
No, I consider the original Trek with Generations, then Deep Space Nine to
Yep.
be like the prime, like
That's
That's what I
but it's
thought.
not the prime. It's the real timeline. It's better to say it's
Okay.
the real timeline.
real timeline. Okay.
Okay.
This is
yeah.
me trying to figure out what the hell Script Doctor is talking about.
Oh, that's awesome.
You're not wrong. They did muddy it up quite a bit.
Why did they do that?
Why? Because J.J. Abrams wants merchandising rights because it's
That's it?
basically a license to print money. And
Ew.
the thing is, he forgot the one important valuable thing, which is that in order for you to make money, you have to make
Story.
something people want to buy.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can't just have the brand.
So here's the question. I've been-
No, seriously. Okay, wait. So Romulus was in this world? I'm
No,
confused.
No, it's gone.
Droid.
It's gone.
Okay, so that's why they had no Romulans. Okay,
But
that's
Vulcan is there, right?
Vulcan
Yes.
is there. Romulus is not, and they have Romulans, but they're scattered
Yeah.
without a home.
They're
and
scattered
apparently-
Yeah. Just
everywhere.
because Romulus is gone, that doesn't mean.
which is weird.
Yeah.
For Star Empire, they had no colonies.
Right.
right. Yeah,
makes
like
no
I never
sense.
understood that. I'm like, why? Okay, but we're not gonna complain about.
So,
this.
Yeah,
Go
I
ahead,
will
go
say
ahead,
this season is like it's not perfect, and there
No.
there are things that I have problems with. I think one of my biggest issues was how Jack Crusher escaped in episode 9. How he just got escaped from the Titan and all that. Yeah, it just seemed a little contrived, a little like why are you doing this? He has powers, and don't you know he has powers? Anyways, but so it's not perfect, and there are other things like people have had like severe issues with. I think that there was a fire that didn't go out immediately on one of the ships, and that ruined the show for them. And
But
What?
and while I agree that's the detail, that's just details for me. And what's most important to me is characters and
Same.
the relationships between the characters, the arc, the stories. Is it fun? Is it entertaining?
Mhm.
And are the characters being respected? Is the lore being respected?
Mhm.
And I started to think of other things that Dune wasn't ruined for me because the sandworms didn't have that internal fire that they're supposed to have, or the teeth weren't exactly right.
Mhm.
So I can pick apart like things in this show too. And but they
If you
did
want
so
to.
much right. It was and what's
Exactly.
most important to me. So if I compare to with like the Star Wars sequel trilogy, if they respected Han, Luke, and Leia, if we had the reunion scene, if they did an amazing job with those characters and the treatment of those characters and did an amazing story, but they still had the Holdo maneuver in it, maybe
Mhm.
Admiral Akbar did the whole Holdo maneuver,
Mhm.
I would still love that. I mean, that wasn't the worst part of that by far of those movies was those details.
You're saying you could have overlooked it, is what you're saying, if they had gotten the core right. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
That's actually the reality of the the situation is that a lot of people, most audiences, will overlook the tiny little flaws if they get the important stuff right.
Exactly.
And to go back to what I was saying earlier with how this season is built on a foundation of sand, like the Leaning Tower of Pisa. It's beautiful, but it's tilted. And that comes down to the plot's main contrivance, which is that when Picard was assimilated initially, they were rewriting his DNA so that if he were to have a child, it would be another means of assimilation. But that presupposes that the Borg knew Picard would have been rescued and unassimilated and freed. And then, so you're like, well, if that's the case, they're very lucky that Jack exists, because otherwise that never would have happened, because Picard was very apprehensive about having children and whatnot. And if you want to try a headcanon and say, well, maybe the Borg just implanted something where he wanted to have a child. Well, where's the rest? Where are other Picard children? Because he wouldn't have just stopped with Beverly, and he didn't know about Jack until a couple of days ago. So it doesn't work. It's a big foundation of sin. He's very lucky that Jack was conceived and that he genetically mutated to be this receiver thing. It's very contrived. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but everything else they do around it with regards to that premise fits within the character archetypes, makes them more human, and they're not incompetent when they're dealing with the situation. And so you can overlook it and be astonished at how beautiful it is, considering the fact that, this doesn't hold up quite well when you really take a step back and realize, well, if the Borg assimilate Picard only for him to not be assimilated so that they could assimilate Earth later and under a new thing, why? Like, it's so out of the norm for a cybernetic, partially artificial intelligence creature.
Well, because they also think that resistance is futile and they'll never be beat. So it would be weird for them to have a fail-safe of thinking that they would actually, that's how that Picard would be able to be taken back. So it's very
any other Borg that gets freed from the collective would have the same byproduct to their DNA and their offspring. So they wouldn't even need Picard. They just need to get any other species. Well, 7 of 9 could have had a child.
7 of 9. I was going to bring that. Yeah.
What if they did it to all the Borg? Was my question. Like that was part of, like, if any of them happened to because I remember it was in Voyager, wasn't it, when you had 7 of 9 started using the holodeck because she was interested in Chakotay, but she started passing out because the doctor told her, well, you understand that cortical implant you have, there's a failsafe. Anytime you get really excited, it knocks you out, because the Borg don't want you to have a path back to individuality. Like anytime her chemicals, her adrenaline and her hormones. So I was like, okay.
By the way, speaking of the holographic doctors, are we talking about the same universe where we're not allowed to have holographic doctors anymore? Because where was all the holographic doctors? I wanted, the doctor to be in this as well, but from Voyager, but it wasn't. But that wasn't.
I liked him.
Well, how come they weren't on ships?
Well, I mean, they still do have emergency EMHs, but we don't know what they look like, because with each upgrade there's a different actor playing them.
But we never got one. There was no holographic EMH on any of the ships, so I was like, is that like an old program?
Well, they did have Beverly. Well, wait, no, they did have another doctor, wasn't there?
They did.
There were 2 doctors. There was 2 female.
They had the Trill. I don't know if she was she joined or not, but she was there, and she was interesting. And
no, but I don't think she was a hologram, is what I'm saying.
No, she was a regular. The hologram comes when the doctor dies or is gone. Or
you only need
in emergencies.
Well, in original Trek, in like Voyager, they were trying to mainline it so that it's on every ship, not that like the doctor dies. It's
Picard appeared in First Contact, so yeah, I mean
I love that cameo, by the way. That was
I do like the fact that Beverly Crusher is like, I swear I'd never use one of these things.
Right. Yeah.
That was
like, you need a distraction. You don't want me to. I'm a doctor, not a doorstop.
I'm a doctor, not a doorstop.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's funny. Let me get to a couple of these super chats really quickly, and then we're gonna talk about a little bit more, because we got to talk about the ending of the of this series as well. So thank you so much, Britt Cormier. Thank you for the $20. So generous. Speaking of time not working right, the minute from the blowing of the core to the beam up was very, very pregnant. I agree. Seeing the ship above them was great, but beam up out of the fly at least. What did you guys think of this one?
That's the power of editing, where what they did in the time that's being passed between Picard, Jack, and them while they're waiting to be rescued, even though they
At
don't
the
know
end?
that time, is happening at the same time of what they're doing. So you have to kind of suspend a little bit of disbelief and realize that they're not
Right.
too
You
much
have
in
to.
sync. Yeah.
Mhm.
But no, I completely understood that. It was weird seeing the Enterprise fly in such a way.
But it was
I-
cool.
I did like Data saying, "Trust me,
Well,
trust my gut." You know, that was like,
I like that too.
Yeah.
And I like the fact that the path that they had to take is the only one that the ship could fit through, because
Mm.
there's other paths that would be more direct, but they're doing the thing. It's this giant maze throughout the cube. It's like,
Star
this is the
Wars.
best way we can get the ship through. To
It
the
was
core.
Star
It's
Wars.
Empire
they did
Strikes Back
explain
too.
it.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, this would a normal human being couldn't do this, and it was like just the right circumstances, and he had to convince LaForge that, I mean, for a good long while they just like, no, we're just gonna die. Or we're gonna leave them. I don't know.
Which I don't
Um,
understand, Nerd Cookies. I don't understand actually why LaForge
Or they
doubted him.
failed.
It's Data. It's like it's
not just
Data.
it's data. It's because
well, it's a
and
new
it-
data though.
it's a new
It's new
data,
data.
but it's also the statistical likelihood of being able to
Yeah.
do it is incredibly high. It's like there's no guarantees. I mean, even Jordy says my daughter couldn't do that, and I like the fact that he acknowledged the fact that his daughter is a pilot, because that's where Jordy started out in his commission.
Yeah,
But
Mhm.
love that.
Which I was shocked. I thought she'd be an engineer. I like that she
no,
was a
the
pilot.
other
but
sister's the engineer.
The
That's-
other,
no, but I
yeah.
thought both is
Yeah.
what I'm.
I love
after.
their family dynamic, by the way.
Yeah.
I love
Very
the
good.
family
too.
dynamics. It was another universal theme that everyone can connect with, and I love the new LaForge daughters. Those were great.
Oh, yeah.
seeing
Well, the
them.
fatherhood was a huge theme in all of this, and I think, George, I was with you because at the beginning I was mad about it. Like, I was like, of course they're gonna give him a daughter, and of course she's gonna be a pilot. She's not gonna be an engineer, like whatever.
That's where I thought it was going until
Yeah, and then and then they introduce the other daughter who's the engineer, and then they kind of go into the relationship, and I thought that was really cool,
it was.
where the girl was like, why do you think I kept ruining the ship so that I could help you fix it, and I thought that was really cool because you got to see these like little relationship things with Jordy
Yeah.
and his daughters. And you had, of course, Picard and Jack, but you also had Riker and the grieving father, because
Mhm.
there's different stages of fatherhood for everyone. So you had like Jordy going through that kind of like the family dynamic of having daughters and them being young and blah blah blah. And one of them
The
is
empty
kind of,
nester, so to speak. He's on that empty nester side of things.
yes,
Picard is the early days of becoming a father,
yes,
and Riker is the tragedy of losing a child.
yes.
We just didn't hear from one
Exactly.
father. That's the thing. I thought we would get a little resolution was Worf, because he's a father.
Well, he's a father, but his child's a disappointment.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
okay.
and also, wait,
Yeah.
am I making a
Alexander is
mistake?
the-
But
Yeah.
didn't Alexander
horrible Klingon he grew up to be.
like forget the family and left? Or
Alexander,
was that the brother?
No, the brother was mind wiped because of this. He couldn't
That's
live with
right.
the dishonor.
I thought it was Alexander for a minute. It was the
Alexander,
brother.
when he grew up a little bit, he left Earth to join the Klingon Defense Force, and
Mhm.
he's considered a fool. But the Klingons find him good luck because they always survive their battles.
They always survived, yeah.
He's a
and
lucky,
achieve
lucky
victory.
charm.
Yeah, so he's
Yeah.
a lucky charm. But again, he's
He trips
only
over his own
technically-
feet.
He's 1/4 human and 3/4 Klingon. So
Mhm.
and the other part too is, yeah, he didn't have a mother to kind of nurture and balance those two. And unfortunately, the Rozhenko family was too old to raise another Klingon child. So yeah, Alexander got the short end of the stick there. I'm glad we didn't see Alexander, and I'm also glad we didn't see Wesley again.
Yes, no
Oh
Wesley.
God.
No
Yeah.
Wesley.
Can you
I was-
imagine like Wesley came back as a traveler? Like, I'd be like,
Well, he
oh
did
my
last
God,
season.
kill me.
Some wanted him to come back this season. Like, no,
No.
no, he already
Man.
had his time.
Yeah. And he
And-
didn't like it. He
Yeah,
wanted to leave.
I can't stand the character. Never liked the character. Never.
I mean, they
liked him in
did talk
TNG.
about him. I liked how they talked about him.
I
That
like
was
that too.
relevant. How
Yeah.
Beverly, she was talking about what happened with Wesley, how that impacted her choices with Jack. So it's not like his character wasn't a element of the story. It was an element as far as Beverly's arc.
Right.
It just makes me
Also-
wonder what Jack Crusher Sr. was like. Because it's like he produced a kid that pathetic.
And like it required the
And
Picard
then his
bloodline.
best friend, who's
Yeah.
significantly older than him, marries his widowed wife, and then they have a kid that is way more interesting and competent. It's like what and named after him. And it's
I like
that
how
is
half
real-
the chat is shut up Wesley right now.
Yeah,
Because
no,
everyone
Chuck
is.
Wesley,
Picard is like 25 years older than Beverly Crusher.
Beverly.
And Jack Crusher was like the senior was like maybe 15 to 20 years younger than Picard. So
I just
like,
think she dropped him on his head when he was younger. That's all.
Good
Right,
lord.
'cause Wesley,
he was
come
born
on.
next to a warp core. How did he go to
Something.
warp
I mean, it just doesn't. The character. I don't know what it is about it. I just. Ugh.
I didn't mind the character at the beginning.
did.
Like I thought he was cool. It
You
was-
liked him
With
in
Jack?
TNG?
Yeah.
Wesley
Episode?
can do no wrong.
Jack or
Wesley's annoying.
Wesley?
No,
No,
Wesley in
Wesley.
seasons 3 and 4 had better sub-story episodes, and they kind of when they were kind of writing him off the show towards the end, that's when they said screw it.
Oh,
Yeah.
But
I-
the earlier
I
stuff with
especially-
Wesley was terrible.
Actually really like one of the really early Wesley episodes,
Really?
which I think it was
Okay.
in episode 1, which was the one that they did. They're trying to do the basic show about now, which was the Starfleet Academy, when he goes to Starfleet Academy and he's like
yeah,
that was
doing
a good one when he's leaving
yeah,
the show.
the season 1 entrance exam. That was one of the better Wesley episodes.
I love that episode. I
They
thought
just
that
never
was a
stuck
freaking
with
great
that part of the
episode.
character.
Of course, now they're doing that stupid Starfleet Academy.
Yeah, you don't need
makes
that.
no
show.
sense.
We'll see what happens.
Huh?
You don't
We'll
need,
see.
you don't need that show. That was like the entire episode. That's what
I know,
Starfleet
but-
Academy is.
I want a
I'm-
continuation of this show.
Yes, so
I'd
do
watch
I.
that of the Enterprise G.
Oh yeah.
Same.
I think
no,
that was too
201
much. I don't think
Studios. I'm
they-
getting into them right now. Don't worry. Grumpy Old Ninja, thank you so much for $5. Says, this reminds me, Alexander's mother is best Klingon besides Worf. Had she lived, Alexander would have been better character. Grumpy's right.
Yeah.
Grumpy's right.
His mother was badass.
John Burns for $6.99 says the humans in Voyager couldn't express their emotions. That was all for all the aliens. Worf and Tasha weren't anyone else on the ship. Commonality. Okay.
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 Well, I mean, we saw lots of emotions on Voyager and from humans throughout Star Trek. The thing is that people conflate emotions and conflicts. In Star Trek, if you're an officer, your conflict is not going to be petty. It's going to actually have meaning. And a lot of writers, especially television writers, go for the low hanging fruit, which is the petty conflicts. You're dating this guy. I want to be dating this guy, or you've got a new car. I want to like those types of things. Those aren't real conflicts. They're good for a comedy or sitcom or something. They're not good for a science fiction television show. And it took a long time for Star Trek writers to kind of figure that out, because that's what Gene Roddenberry was saying. He's like, listen, they're not going to have petty conflicts. They're supposed to be working together professionally and get along.
And the petty conflicts is one of the reasons I didn't like certain things about this too, is because, for example, with like Rafa's character, I think it's Rafa, right? It was a Rafi, like her character and how she's like a crackhead, or she was, and she she's from a broken family now, and she's like trying to like do all this stuff to like get back to her. I'm just like, okay, so they have like no nuclear families. Like they're talking about like this black chick is still like, a crackhead. Like I'm just like, what the fuck? Like
She just put woke tartary on her head that represents Hollywood studios.
literally that though. It's true, George.
I mean, I didn't watch well, I saw the one episode, where she's like mad at Picard for her miserable life.
Yeah.
Like,
somehow she has a miserable life living on her. I'm like, how does that work?
I mean, money isn't a thing. Like all poverty and sickness, most sickness is done away with. We're at a good time in human civilization, and what problems do you have?
Right, exactly.
She's in a trailer by Vasquez Rocks.
I mean, it's not like you're without money that you can't buy or live in a better place, because money isn't a thing. And
Not the way
so that was
we view it. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and
but it was a lingering thing. Yeah, I'm glad we didn't have too much of Rafi, but
and like
Rafi and Worf are fine.
Yeah, and you wouldn't have substance abuse issues at that stage in the future. And like usually in Star Trek, when they did have those kind of things, it was always through the lens of the alien race that they're running into because we're past those things. So like, Gene Roddenberry's vision was to show the 20th century struggles with, people who've already passed it so that they can, he could portray what he
humanity
thought.
grew up to be Ward Cleaver, and the rest of the galaxy is Beaver and Wally not getting their stuff together. And Dad has to come in and be like, listen, I'm going to tell you that you should be thinking about things. I'm not going to tell you what to think. Even though there's a number of episodes where they do have a very specific direction of what is right and wrong. But they keep it vague enough so that you can debate the right and wrong and justify it. Like, a lot of people cite the Private Little War, saying like, "Oh yeah, it's up and ambiguous. You don't know what you do." It's like, well, no, they know it's wrong to do that. They tell you specifically it's wrong to arm people to fight a war on your behalf. The ending makes it feel like they don't have a decision because Kirk and Spock beam up without making a decision. They just wanted to get off the planet. They are not Kirk and Spock. Kirk and McCoy. They're defeated. They know that. It's too much damage is done. They can't do anything for it. And that was the lesson, which is that you fight a proxy war with other cultures for your own personal benefit. That was the message. That's a very specific message. That's not really open for debate. The debate is why you don't do it. Not that you can get away with it. That Star Trek had very strong directions of what they're trying to say, but the debate was over the perspective of how you address that situation.
100%. Did you were you gonna add something, Nerd Cookies?
I was gonna say, apart from that, I mean, I did like her interchanges with Worf. I thought her progression was fine, and even where she ended up at the end as first officer, I was happy about that. Like, all right.
Okay. I wasn't happy about that at all.
Yeah, I wasn't either. You would like to see her in a Star Trek Legacy with that same crew? You think it would work?
It's not my favorite, but
okay.
Yeah, no,
I just wasn't like, that didn't ruin it for me.
Gotcha.
That's what I'm saying.
Nothing ruined this for me. I have nitpicks. That's all.
Yeah, it didn't ruin it for me either, but I was nitpicking. I was like, her. No, like I was like very taken aback by that. I was like, ugh.
And does anybody know if that's happening? That's what I keep hearing. Is Legacy happening, or is that just a rumor?
Nothing is happening. One thing you have to remember is that Terry Metalis was signed to a very limited contract with Secret Hideout, but he has a larger contract with CBS Studios. His contract with Secret Hideout is over. Anything he works on, unless Secret Hideout wants to get involved with that and hire him back, it's going to be his own thing that he's pitching.
But won't they do that script after its success? Wasn't this successful? Didn't it break it
charted for a bit, but I think the final numbers will put it better than where it was, but I don't think it'll put it in the top 10, but we'll find out in a couple of weeks, I think.
Okay.
And I want to clarify, it's not like, I don't know how the future series with her will work. Honestly, I feel like there might be a conflict of interest because of their relationship with Seven.
Yeah, good point.
So I don't know if I can actually see her being in that position, or maybe she'll find that she needs to be in another position on another station somewhere else. But as far as her arc, as far as her professional aspirations, I think they did want to wrap that up because she was a character on this show since season 1. And whether or not I can see her going forward, I actually don't really see that happening, just because of, can you really be, a captain, the best captain you can be when someone at your side has that? Can you keep that, your past with this person, professional in every aspect of your decision making? So in that respect, I'm not sure. If I can see her there in the future in another series, but
gotcha.
I didn't mind it as far as, she's finally where she wants to be professionally. That's where she wants to be in Starfleet. And that's what kind of was the thing with her character. And again, because she was a part of this show since season 1.
But that's why I felt like it was kind of a hand-me-down position. They were like, oh, just because you were here since season 1, like, here you go. Because I felt like it would have been better if she had possibly even like not been on the Enterprise. Like like somebody, Angela says like she would have been good for Section 31. Like, yeah, like just like stick her in Section 31
Yeah.
or like have her somewhere else and then have Picard's son be the number 2. But somehow Picard's son became the counselor, which I was like,
there's okay.
What?
So
Like-
here goes back. This goes back to the fact that because Jack is mostly a plot device, his character is sacrificed. We don't know much really about him in comparison to the other characters introduced. I think because they killed the Vulcan science officer, if I'd been in the writer's room, the first thing I would have said okay, if we're breaking the story down, we're going to kill this character at the end. I think Jack should have similar skills to that character so that when we put him on the ship as an ensign, he's in that person's position. He is the new science officer because he's a doctor. He's been traveling with his mother, so he's well versed in other languages and whatnot. Like he'd be very useful.
Okay.
Instead, what we get is, oh no, he's in the third seat as essentially Deanna Troi 2.0. And it's like, okay,
I didn't like that.
You're kind of rushing this character for the plot contrivance that he is, and you're sacrificing it as opposed to figuring out properly organized ways that this could work. The other part that bothered me is the Titan earned its name in that battle on Frontier Day. It's very insulting to rename a starship the Enterprise because like you just basically wipe his history clean of the Titan. Like, oh yeah,
I agree.
Titan's not important enough. The Enterprise is what really mattered.
Also, it's not the flagship. The Enterprise is the flagship.
The Enterprise was only ever the flagship as the Enterprise D.
Right.
So what
Enterprises were not flagships.
So was I forget, was the new Enterprise that they
the Enterprise F
launched on Frontier Day, is that destroyed?
Or what I don't know what happened to that. I thought it's either destroyed or decommissioned, but
I thought it was back at the museum.
Why the Enterprise F? That's a new ship. The D.
No, that's D. D is in the museum.
Yeah, I should have rewatched this before the stream. I can't remember.
That's okay. Something happened to the E. See, and the other part, like the list of the grievances that I have are like, oh, they reoriented the Titan to be a Nuo Constitution class, which is like, why would you do that? That's just I would have kept the Titan as a Titan, let it be his thing, have the crew on it, and when they promote 7, they give her the brand new Enterprise.
Agreed.
That happens to be the Nuo Constitution class, a ship we never saw before. And then it's like, okay, the Titan's doing its own thing. You can have your Star Trek Titan, and now you got the new captain of the Enterprise and Jack.
Yeah, and then stick Raffi on the fucking Titan and get her to fuck off. Like
honestly, that would make more sense to me. And
I know,
and that kind of goes with Raffi too.
So why did they do that then, Script? Because what you're saying makes sense. Like they're dishonoring the blood that was spilled. Like it earned its seat at the table. The Titan.
And I know that a lot of people are probably going to say, well, the Enterprise A was originally the Yorktown. It was renamed. Well, that's never been canonically accurate. That was in some ancillary stuff. The Enterprise A, the Constitution class refit that we saw in the movies, they were essentially new builds. And the old Constitution ships that survived were rebuilt into the one that we saw in the movies. And Star Trek V was the fact that, oh yeah, this is a new ship, it's rebuilt and it's falling apart because it was rushed and Scotty has to fix it. And that's all the problems that you got on that ship. And it's also considered in the Navy, I think, bad luck to rename vessels. So also that'd be kind of taboo for Starfleet to do.
I thought they were going to call it the Picard, to be completely honest, because they were like, they were bringing it up, they were bringing Picard to it, and then they're like, you just wait until you see the name, and I was like, oh, it's gonna be named the Picard, and it would have made sense because the series is called Picard, and so I thought they were gonna name the ship Picard.
I think
like,
I
it's
don't
the
think
Enterprise.
I mean,
like,
you could argue that they could have named it Picard because Picard is dead and we got a robot in there.
Yes,
because that's usually the tradition. But yeah, I think it would have been better if they didn't acknowledge that the E was destroyed, that the E is still in service, because they went through 4 alphabetical letters of Enterprise in the 24th century at this point. and previous to that, it was there was only 3 vessels, the Enterprise A, and then the B. 3 vessels in 100 years, and now there's 4 in another 100 years. It's pushing it. We're getting pretty deep into the alphabet so far in just these first 2 centuries. So I think it would have been better if it was still the E in service, and it was Frontier Days. It's decommissioning. The Enterprise D comes in, saves the day, and then the Enterprise F is the Neo Constitution class that's christened the Enterprise F with a new crew, and the Titan was still the Titan Luna class starship. We are getting Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm getting you guys into very deep.
Wow.
lore with Star Trek.
What a
No, that's
nerd.
fascinating.
Nerd.
I love it.
I think that would have been interesting because you still. I would love to have a USS Titan. I would love to have a Captain Shaw series.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. To honor Shaw, I think would have been.
They should have named it
really
Earl
good.
Grey. That's the
USS Earl Grey.
You know, I wonder. Sorry.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Those little things like that, the Jack Crusher being on there and Rafi and the Enterprise G, it really just seems to me because they really wanted to, like, this could be the ending, but we want to put that little thing at the end credit scene that there could be a future.
Yes.
That's what it kind of felt to me. They wanted to like wrap it up in a nice little bow, and this is a possible future of the Star Trek. But then with the end credit scene, it like if another series does gets made, I feel like there would be changes. I feel like there should be like a Titan that would come up in some fashion, and maybe Rafi gets transferred to that, and Jack Crusher gets in another position, because I wasn't sure about that either, about him being right there in that position too.
Yeah.
But it just
They were
felt
like, we
like
fast tracked you to counselor. I'm like, what?
yeah.
Listen,
But it felt like
that
because
Jack
they
is-
didn't know if this is the last hurrah ever, like I don't know.
Yeah.
But if it did continue, I wonder if they would actually make adjustments to that.
I'm
That would
sure.
make more sense to have more of an arc, to start somewhere else and then work your way up, especially in terms of Jack. So yeah, I wonder if
Well,
that's
and
because of that.
We're
Mhm.
missing a lot of cast members too. Like, I mean, like, we don't know who would be the security officer. I mean, we're presuming Data will be the science officer, but we don't know. You know, is Data staying on the Enterprise, or is he going off to other places of authority?
He's
Like,
exploring
museum
his
authority.
feelings.
Well, because I listened to an interview with Brent Spiner, and when
He'll be in therapy.
no, when Numbnut was asking him, the guy who plays Wesley Crusher, whose name I always like to forget, was asking him, you know, is this the end for Data? Like, this whole thing is done. He's like, the door is always open. He's like,
Yeah,
he's
but
like,
it's
he loves
Data.
it.
Oh yeah, a lot
Right,
less
exactly.
makeup for Brent Spiner. Of course, he's going to do it now.
And I mean, to like, even though I hated what they were doing with the whole like, you know, lore thing, I thought it was dumb. But at the same time, he acted so well. Like, I was like, oh my god, like,
Oh yeah, his performance
yeah, his shift
as
from
lore and that.
yeah,
Well,
was
what's
so
hysterical
good.
is that Laura is still alive and disassembled at Daystrom Station. Like, we saw his
Yeah.
body there. It's just a copy of him that was inside Data. So
Yeah.
if they wanted
Mhm.
to get like a stunt actor and then to do a deep fake stuff, they could do another lore, like a young looking lore thing.
They
So
could
he's
bring
a
lore
mix of
back.
all those things. He's a
And
mix
he's
of
Dr.
B4 and
B4, yeah.
Yeah,
Data,
he's a copy of all those programs compiled into a single positronic matrix to create Data 2.0.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I applaud Terry for, like, I don't care if Data's dead. We're making this reunion. We're having them all on the conference table, and we're having them
Yes.
all on the Enterprise D.
Yes.
So I
And playing
applaud him
poker.
for using his imagination and creativity to giving the fans what we want and honoring these characters.
100%.
I would say it
Here,
was more
here.
that what the fans needed, because that's what Nemesis was. It was to set up the destruction of Data and to bring him back a la Search for Spock. They didn't get their follow-up movie to that. And Terry's like, the fans needed that follow-up movie. You can't get rid of that level of a main character. And to go back earlier where I said it's really 3 movies in one season, it's Star Trek Picard season 3 is the first part is Wrath of Khan, with Picard learning he has a son and there's someone after that wants their revenge on him and his family. Second one is Search for Data. They go and they get Data, they bring him back, and now he's in there. And then the third one is the Voyage Home, where Earth is under attack. The president even goes so far as to warn people off the planet, and it's up to the Enterprise crew and an automated ship to save the Federation on Frontier Day as it's being attacked.
Mhm.
Wow, that's
The
really
only
good.
gripe I had was that it's another Borg story.
I like the
I
Borg.
liked it. I
I
liked
like
it.
the Borg.
The
But we
story
are-
is one thing, and then that was a twist I actually wasn't well, I kind of got
Everybody was expecting it
You
and hoping
know.
it wasn't the case, because I've done the math. There are 31 Star Trek episodes that are Borg plot centric.
Mm.
That is more than the Klingons as antagonists and the Romulans as antagonists
Come on.
combined. The
Through-
only
wait, are you talking about through TNG or through all? It can't be through all.
I'm
of
talking
that.
from TNG. Most of them come from Voyager, but it's TNG and Voyager are the
Yeah,
majority, and there's
TNG.
also
Right.
2 in
well,
Enterprise.
the Borg are from there.
Because
so
they
that-
did have it in Voyager a lot. They
Yes,
carried
that's
it.
where
that
they
was
live,
their
though.
main enemy. So
The
yeah,
Delta Quadrant is where the Borg originated. So
yeah.
I always wanted to see that one from. I thought they were going to bring them back eventually. That one species, what was it? 847. The one,
2479.
D&D.
Oh,
one
yeah.
in liquid
479.
space, fluid space.
Yeah,
yeah, that was cool. That's
They're-
why that's one of my
they're
favorite
great.
storylines in that.
Same. I love them.
My
Real quick,
favorite-
let me get these super chats here. 200 Watt Studios for $5 says Beverly was protecting her son. Worf was a Shaolin monk. Picard was waiting to die on the vine. See what I did there? Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Oh.
I hate you, 200 Watt Studios. In the best way. I love you. Britt Cormier, thank you so much for the 5. Says Shaw referred to himself as Grease Monkey. How much grease do you think is used in a starship engineering? That's funny.
Oh, anything with metal moving parts would require grease, and there's lots of them in a starship.
Or
Mhm.
figurative grease, if
And
anything.
there's also figurative grease too.
Figurative,
I'm more of a
yeah.
plasma
What,
monkey.
dilithium grease? But
And by the way, I love Shaw because, I didn't like him at first, but when I think about it, he's probably the captain I relate to the most. It's
Really?
probably me.
why?
Because
why is
I'm that kind of I'm really like a stickler for
the rules.
the rules, and I get annoyed when it's not.
When the rules are
being on here
broken?
too. But also like mostly when he was like geeking out with
With
LaForge.
LaForge.
That's when I actually was a turning point for me.
Yes. Yes. Okay, Elaine, I'm really glad you brought that up because that was one of the things that really annoyed me about the character was how disrespectful he was to Riker and
Picard.
Picard.
Oh.
It was so annoying. And I was like, it's almost as if like, but then like when I look back, right, and it's almost as if he represented what new Trek is. Like he represented Kurtzman and like all the and JJ and all the people who disrespected Picard and like did all that bad stuff. And then when he met Geordi and he was like a little like schoolboy, he was like a little fanboy, and he's like,
He was
"Oh
a
my God,
nerd
it's
boy. He was
Geordi."
like, oh
and I
my
was
God,
like,
it's Geordi.
yeah, it was so funny to see like the difference, and I thought that was a really cool character thing that they did with him because it just shows that like he could nerd out too.
Yeah.
Like he's not like
He's
that.
not a
He just
stickler.
yeah.
But I think the best part was when Geordi is like saying, "You've barely been able to keep this ship together," and he's like, "It's been a week." And it's like it's dry, but it's
Love it.
appropriate. And I do like the fact that he's an engineer who became a captain in command.
Mhm.
So yeah, that makes
Elaine
sense.
relating to him, I totally get. I'm more like of a Jellicoe thing,
Oh,
where I mean I like order and structure,
Yeah.
and I don't like excuses that aren't reasons. And Riker gave him tons of excuses, but they weren't reasons, and that's why I think they didn't get along well at first.
I mean,
And
I wouldn't say those things out loud. Some of the things Shaw was saying, I might be thinking them, but I would never say it.
You're too
How do
But
you say
everything
that?
else I can.
How do you say that to Picard and Riker? I mean, the
You-
first meeting when
he's-
he's eating, I'm like sitting there going,
You
"Who the
treat
fuck
them
is
like-
this asshole?
It
You know
was
who that is?"
no way. It was too much, George. I couldn't even
I
believe
think it was
it.
a little much at
I
first.
think
It was
the
too
reason
much.
you have difficulties believing that is because Shaw treats everyone like they're an individual and a human being.
Right, but
And
you're
he
talking
doesn't
about
care
like,
about the reputation because the reputation can always be misconstrued to either benefit or hurt the individual. He's looking at them as who they are, and he saw exactly right through what they were doing. A surprise inspection from a captain without a seat and a retired admiral before Frontier Day? No,
He
something's up.
stuck
I
them
mean,
in
they
bunk
did-
beds.
They
Is that
did
what
have
you think it-
ulterior motives. That's the
Yeah.
thing. They were there on false pretenses.
And he
I
saw
would-
right through that.
That's like Kirk and Spock showing up. It's like you're going to be like,
Yeah.
these guys have saved the universe how many times? You're going to have
But
a
if
little
they're
bit
showing up to abuse your ship, that is ruining their reputation. And that's the thing that Shaw is
Yeah.
acknowledging here is like you're using your reputation to abuse your power aboard my starship. If Kirk was in Shaw's position, Kirk would do the exact same thing. He also
Without
has-
the disrespect, Shaw was disrespectful.
Yeah.
Kirk
Well, I
was
mean, they
never
were disrespectful
disrespectful.
too by lying to him.
Well,
So he
wouldn't
was
you
just kind
think-
of reciprocating it, saying, how do you feel like this? Like that you're treating me like I'm a fool.
Well-
And how do you like being treated like I think you're a fool? And it was a back and forth, but it's a rocky start because again, had they again, they were told you can't trust anyone in Starfleet, so that's what justified their disguise. But what would be the argument saying like, hey, Shaw, a Starfleet former head of Starfleet Medical, who has been working on the border of frontier planets trying to help them, has just sent a distress signal to one of our most prominent retired admirals, and he wants to go and investigate and rescue her. It's not an order, but we're asking you to be human about this. What would you do? We will never know what that is, but as we've learned of what Shaw's doing afterwards, you can kind of suspect that he'd probably have considered it more as opposed to a flat out no, because his entire mandate was protecting the ship and his crew. And for someone like Picard and Riker going in, it's like, this is a member of our crew. We may not have a ship, but they're a member of our crew. We just want to borrow yours. And that was that. I love the fact, I think they got something backwards with Shaw, which is that because he has such a chip on his shoulder with Borg, he was calling 7 of 9 Hansen. I think he should have been calling her 7 of 9, and 7 of 9 should be saying, my name is Annika Hansen, because it's more in line with the morals of Star Trek. That 7 of 9's arc is that she regains the humanity and she takes back the name that was stolen from her and replaced with a Borg designation. It makes no sense that she would still
fight for 7 of 9
by 7 of 9, which is the name of her essentially being a slave and the loss of humanity. Because it's
that
not
was what she was born with, though. That she didn't view it as that was her family. That was her as a child. She was a Borg, so it was kind of different perspective. That's all she knew.
Assimilated at the age of 9, and she was trying to regain her humanity. And one part of individuality is acknowledging your name. And 7 of 9 is not really a name; it's a designation. It's like a part of a litter. It's like, that's number 7 of 9 that were born.
Yeah. It's like, well, and that was a huge arc. That was a huge arc with her and the Doctor too, because he was trying to figure out his name and trying to figure out what his name should be, and he was trying to teach her how to be human and to identify with Annika, but she couldn't, because she was like, that's why she liked 7 of 9, because she really hadn't found her human self back yet. And as she was evolving towards her humanity more, that was basically kind of like the Voyager arc that she had. So I could see it from your point of view, but at the same time, I think she came to kind of understand that 7 was her name. Like, she kind of identified as 7 of 9. I know that sounds awful, but that's the thing that kind of made me think that that's what they were doing. It was like this new age of she identifies as 7 of 9, and he's not calling her by that name, so he's a bad guy. And I was
but he's doing something objectively.
I think he was just being precise. I mean that. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just thought he's very as a structured and rule by the book person. I think he was just in his mind, just being precise. I don't think he viewed it in the same way that she was viewing it, and he just didn't understand what it was to her specifically being raised as a Borg. I mean, it's a unique situation, and so on paper, that's probably what he was. I don't know.
I just think it's reversed, because I just go back to, well, what is the themes of Star Trek? It's about individuality and our humanity. And why would you ever have a character that's going on that journey? And that was the journey that kind of saved Voyager from cancellation. Not just because it was played by a gorgeous actor, but also someone who actually, I've seen her in other roles, and she can actually bring in the skill.
She has passion. She has talent.
It just feels so antithetical to the philosophy of Star Trek, which is well, why are you losing that identity? It's not the same as the TNG episode where the Admiral's grandson, as a baby, is adopted by an alien species and given a name and a culture and grows up that way. 7 of 9 has actually had stories where she remembers herself as a child. She knows her identity survives in Unimatrix 01 in that tertiary dimension sort of thing on the board,
where she falls in love. Where she falls in love and has relationships. All of this stuff should be supported to the fact that when we see her again 25 years later, where she's behaving far more human than the efficient Borg. She should be Annika Hansen, not 7 of 9. And anyone that calls her that would be it's like dropping a racial slur to her, because she's I am not Borg. Borg took everything from me. I had to rebuild myself and I'm taking the name back that my parents that loved me back, because they loved me. The Borg used me. Why would I ever want to be called 7?
I could see that too.
And I could totally see Shaw, who hates the Borg because he's a survivor, Wolf 359, be completely have a chip on his whenever he sees Anna Hansen in his crew, and he calls her Commander of 9. and it just doesn't acknowledge her humanity because he still sees her as a Borg, and she has to prove to him that she's human. So that at the end, when he dies, which I didn't like that choice, but I understood it, he says, "You take the con,
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Commander Hansen," because that would have shown that yes, I recognize that you are a human. I recognize that a Borg that was rescued from assimilation can be saved and regain their humanity, and it's.
I think
so.
I think I see it from this point of view too, though, because she became a family with the Voyager crew, and so the name Seven, which was kind of given to her by Janeway.
No, it wasn't. It was
no, that was her designation.
I know 7 of 9 was her designation, but Janeway never wanted to call it. There was an episode where she's like, "I don't want to keep calling you 7 of 9, so what can I call you?" And she's like, "I guess 7." And she's like, "Okay, 7 it is." And so she started calling her 7. And so yes, it was her designation, but 7 was short for the short version of 7 of 9. And so she became used to being called 7, and 7 kind of became her name, like throughout the entire journey of being friends with these people, and they all knew her as 7. So I mean, I think that's something I can see it from both arguments. And that's one of the reasons that this show is great, because we can sit here and talk about these nitpicky ideas of whether 7 of 9 should have been called 7 or Annika, or whether Shaw's cool or like not cool, whether she was disrespectful
I'd rather
or
do
not
that.
respectful, what kind of captain he was.
One is the acclamation from Borg to humanity. So you take that step by step. So you say, well, what do you want to be called now that you're no longer a Borg? Well, my designation is 7. It's like, okay, so that's a hang up from your past life that we got to work through. Towards the end of Voyager, she talked to herself as Annika Hansen. And then as soon as we got to Picard season 1, they completely abandoned that because, they're stupid over there.
Well, I think it was beautiful. My problem is I didn't like, again, I love Shaw. I like the arc, and I like the way he grew. And to address what Nina just said, I'd rather talk about all my little nitpicks and how the conversations we're having, what we like and dislike, than going, God, this is woke.
I know. I love the nitpick.
So to me, this is what we're supposed like. This is fun. But Shaw, I didn't understand the aspect. Like, how could he still have a chip on his shoulder about Picard, because he said it's Locutus. No, they took him. He didn't volunteer and go, I want to be Locutus. It was against his will. So I was like,
I didn't like that either, George.
That is part of victimhood, where you are so traumatized by the actions that you cannot see all the details of what has happened. Like it's finding out, some sort of tragic event happened and you were nearby and you got injured, but you shouldn't have been. For every planet that was happening, you shouldn't have been harmed, yet you were, and you just can't help but blame the people that they didn't want to harm you. They had no intention of harming you, but something just happened that they couldn't control and they harmed you, but you can't.
Guilt by association.
He made it sound almost like Picard wanted to be Locutus. But you killed everybody. It's like, well,
see, that's the thing, though.
Yeah, but Cisco had that same issue.
Cisco had the same issue, same arc, and that was actually my issue with Shaw's arc, was that it's been done. Cisco already went.
And the other part too is
I would have liked something new.
Neither Cisco nor Shaw understand that Picard was helpless.
Right.
They all feel like to themselves they could have probably fought back or done something. But the idea that the thing that was very scary about the Borg is that you can't.
Well, yeah. Remember when they brought him back onto when they beamed him back into the Enterprise, and eventually when they unplugged him when they're facing the Borg and he was telling Data he fought. He goes, I kept fighting and I couldn't stop it.
Yeah. Like the episode of Family, the follow up to that, the season 4 episode 2. When he's crying to his brother, saying like, they took everything from me. I tried to fight it, and nothing was happening. You are literally your mind trapped in a body that's being controlled by something else. And no one could probably we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but I don't think we could ever really completely understand and relate what that trauma is.
When you're looking at the face of the man, I mean, the name is different, but that's the person.
That's the person, and it was their body. And the other part too, you also have to consider, and this is something I think would have been fun to explore, but I can totally understand why, is that they have to consider, Picard is probably thinking the exact same thing I'm thinking when I look at his face every time he looks in the mirror, because all he's going to see is that reflection of Locutus, the stuff, the murders that he made, the 10,000 lives lost in that battle. that
Mhm.
didn't have to be. If only he was strong enough and whatnot. But no amount of strength could have saved you. I'm very, very glad that they didn't try to pull a rope-a-dope where Jack Crusher was stronger than the Borg Queen. It was able
Oh
to
God, I'm
corrupt
so
her.
glad about that. That would have been so
Because
freaking
they would
bad.
have done that on Discovery.
Oh,
Michael
yeah,
Burnham
of
would have been
course.
assimilated. He would have
100%.
assimilated the Queen.
She would
You
have.
100%. I was thinking that too. Britt Cormier, thank you so much for the 5. Says, can we all agree that the best cursing on network sci-fi TV show was
Hell yeah.
in Firefly? Hell yeah.
I
Or
agree.
should I say?
And I heard they're bringing that back a year ago.
I
No,
don't know.
don't do it. I heard that too.
Disney Plus shows don't seem to be doing great right now. I don't think they're doing anything but Star Wars. National Treasure just got canceled.
Gank.
Well, the thing is,
Willow got canceled.
Good.
National Treasure had a shot in the same way that Turner and Hooch did, but nobody watched it because the IPs, number one, weren't big enough, and number two, Disney did nothing to advertise it in comparison to what they did with Star Wars.
Yeah,
And
but I
Marvel.
heard they wokeified it too.
Yeah.
Like,
I saw the first episode, and it's like
no
there's
good.
superficial wokeification, but there's
Okay.
actually something else going on there.
Hmm.
And I was going to start following up, but I just forgot about it, unfortunately, because again, nobody was talking about National Treasure. Turner and Hooch takes the woke elements and makes fun of them by kind of embarrassing the producers that wanted them in there. And
I actually did like that.
I gotta watch that.
So I never watched it.
Turner and
I think
Hooch
I watched
was
a
really
few.
way better than it should have been. Matt Nix basically was like, "Oh wait, you want me to have a male and female partner, U.S. Marshals doing stuff? Okay, I'm gonna make the female partner pregnant so I can get a male partner in there because she has to go on maternity leave." And that's what he did. And then similar things are happening over on True Lies. Matt Nix, again, he's doing the True Lies TV show.
Is that good?
It's the same level as Turner and Hooch. It feels like it's dated television, even though it's made modern times, but it definitely
works.
It works, and it's not like a brilliant show, but it works, and it's not bad, and it's not overly wokeified, and the stuff that they do that you think is woke ends up being a duck blind to something far more interesting.
Oh, I like that.
And but it's
Have
not
you kept up with
brilliantly
Quantum
written.
Leap at all?
Quantum Leap
it's
is
all
atrocious.
That's hard.
It
It's
is a
not
lost
even the
leader.
shadow of them.
They have to get a second season out of it to make their money back on the amortization of the sets.
How do they make money
I'm
back
very
when
disappointed.
it failed?
With what I was hearing
the thing is
about
they
that.
make very little money back on advertisement, commercial spots that they air, and they put so much money into it at the beginning that it's like we have to do a second season even though the ratings aren't there because they fell below the threshold that NBC normally cancels shows for.
Gotcha.
Because they spent so much, it's like, well, it's cheaper to do one more season and kind of at best maybe break even than to tear everything down and then spend another X million amount of dollars to create another new show to fill that hour time slot. So now they can probably make another new show that's going to replace it during the second season run. And then second season might be its last, or they might get lucky and actually do a good story and then save their show and go on from there. It's all crazy networking, politics, and sales. It's a nightmare to be in.
This season of Picard needs to be studied by studios.
Executives.
And like Amazon has their hands on Stargate, and who knows what's going to happen with that. You need to study this. This is what fans want.
They don't need to study it. They just need to give it to a person who likes the fucking property. Like that's it. Just like knows the property, likes the property, and does stay out of their way. It's
that's part of
Rings
it.
of Power,
See,
right?
this is what works. This is what works. You took something that, and also that was in deep disrepair and dysfunction, by the way. Like, you could see the Rotten Tomatoes scores for the audience scores on Picard's 1 and 2. It ain't pretty, but in this season, 90-something%, high 90s, both critics and audiences agree generally. And
yeah, because it's beautiful. I mean, and like what you just, it's what you just said. You had Q, a god, got space cancer last
What the fuck?
season. It's like, how do you fucking kill a god and then they bring him back in this? Yeah,
I know. I heard that from Gary last night, and I was like, "What? No, this is."
Well, I mean, that's assuming that the Q that we saw, the Q that we saw in season 2, could be the Q at the end of his life, where he can travel to any point in time he wants, and the Q that we have in the end of season 3 is just an earlier, younger version of that same Q. So
what did he say? He was like the Q to you, or
he says, "Don't think so linearly, young mortal." I think he said to Jack.
Yeah, because
You know what? It made sense.
Yeah.
It's not like that couldn't I couldn't
No, he
conceive
could.
of him coming back. He's an omnipotent being, and
That sounds like you.
Well, because he said,
It did.
I thought humanity's trial was over, and he's like,
Yeah,
you know,
your trial.
Picard is like,
Yeah.
no, it's your. I was like, yes. Like my two favorite scenes there was the poker. I know that sounds like a
I
simple, but the
love that.
poker scene, I've played it over and over, just watching them just hang out, and then Q and actually one more.
Yeah.
It was when when they were about to launch when they were about to blow up the, what do you call it, the signal, the beacon inside of the cube,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
he's looking back to Beverly, because I don't think there was any dialogue there for a moment. He looked like he was almost trembling, like his eyes were about to water, and she's just looking at him, and I'm like, I found her to be typically a wooden actress, but this scene, it was just, they were emoting. I was like, wow, because she didn't want to kill her son, obviously, wants to save him, but you don't know what's going to happen. And you see Geordi, he's like turning around, and like very powerful scene.
What I love those two. What did you guys think of the let's just say homage to Star Wars, the Return of the Jedi ending of, flying into the Borg cube with the spaceship and shooting it? What did you guys think of that?
I enjoyed it.
I liked it too.
You know what? This is the last time we're going to see these people, this crew together.
Mhm.
It was balls to the wall. This is their most lethal
yeah.
enemy, and this is the last. So, and they made sense to me. They at least did the work to like make it conceivable within this universe. Data is the only one I could think would accomplish this, and this Data in particular. So how they could set it up was fine, and it was cool, and it was fun and exciting. Honestly, there was in that moment not a ton of actiony moments, because you have Picard who's just having this conversation with Jack. So it added some like an action set piece to that I think it kind of needed. And it was just so cool to see that. And we're never going to see this again, which made it even more special. Like this is a 1 in a million thing. It's never gonna happen. And again, it's the last ride for these characters. So yeah, go balls to the walls, go
Hell
all
yeah.
out, and
Well, what
have
if
a
it was
good
so
time.
successful? Is there no way to ever have them back again for like a movie? That's what I'm curious. Because Script, Hollywood.
Well,
If they looked at something like this and they go, look how well it worked, they would never do. Or is this literally it? Because they said after
this might be literally it. Not
Nemesis, it was
because they
done.
can't do it. It's because the age of the actors. I mean,
Yeah,
LeVar
Picard's
Burton's the
old.
youngest- LeVar Burton's the youngest one there. Everyone else is in their mid to late 70s.
Because Brent Spiner's what, 72?
72. I think LeVar Burton is like 70. They're old.
Patrick Stewart's like 82, 80.
Patrick Stewart,
right?
Patrick Stewart is 10 years younger than
82. I just looked it up.
And Shatner is far
90.
more alive than Patrick Stewart is.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
And it's just different lifestyles.
Freaking Captain Kirk, he's going to real space. He's like, you know what? I gotta face the final frontier. He actually went. That's the coolest freaking dude on Earth.
I like what Warm Monkey says. We can that
Keeps him
Bernie's
young.
201 Studios for $5 says Brett Spiner has never watched an episode of TNG. Dorn has seen them all. That's amazing. Britt, thank you so much for the $10. Oh, wait, I'm going to read this because she just said BRB in the back. So I'm going to read this right after she comes back. 200 Watt Studios, thank you for the $5, says real timeline is not Prime. Prime was invented by Secret Hideout for licensing for Secret Hideout, TOS Enterprise. Is real timeline not Prime nor Kelvin? I don't get it. Okay, so Prime is bad?
So Prime is an invention of Bad Robot and Secret Hideout to kind of hoodwink the audience thinking that this is from the core Star Trek, but it's not.
Okay.
It's another, you have the original, you then have the quote unquote Prime, which is within Bad Robot and Secret Hideout, and then you have the Kelvin, which is primarily Bad Robot. Bad Robot.
Okay. Okay. That makes sense. George, you have to go?
Yeah, I do. Unfortunately, I told you I had that My family never throws a name day party. This year they called the entire family and surprised me. So they're like all downstairs. And I'm like, I'm gonna go.
Oh,
No, but
okay,
I want to sit with
go.
you, but I have to get going. I love you guys.
Yeah, love you, man. Plug your
Thank you, Brad.
channel. Let everyone know where they can find you before you go.
This was a lot of fun. You can find me at George the Giant Slayer. I just put out a new video called Guess Gatekeeping Works, but it's going over Rings of Power and Amazon and all the troubles they're going through, but how the fellowship pretty much stood up and their love and respect for it.
That we did.
Great to see you, Script.
Good to see you, sir.
Good to see
Have
you.
a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Make sure you guys are subscribed to George. His links are in the description, and Darren's dropping the links too. So thank you very much on that. And we got a couple more super chats, and then we're gonna get final thoughts and call it a stream. It's been a great stream so far. And we got Mo here. Mo for $5 says they established that by highlighting Shaw's hatred of the events of Wolf 359. Shaw is great, very complex, and such is very relatable. I know I like that we can have these conversations, Mo. I love that because I have a love-hate relationship with Shaw. It was I hated him, and then by the end I kind of sort of liked him. I thought that DS9 did it better in terms of that kind of storyline, but hey, you can't have it all. And the actor, I gotta say, the actor that played Shaw, I don't know his name, I'm sorry, Script Doctor, maybe you can help me out.
Todd Stashwick.
Todd Stashwick did an amazing job with the character because he makes you hate him, but he also makes you like him. So that's an actor's job, and he did a really good job with it. And I think that deserves a lot of praise.
I like how Nerd Cookies is in the captain's chair with the super chat brought up like this.
Yes, yes. And actually, you have a super chat here from Britt who wants to know, you can call them both member berries, but one of them is delicious fruit and the other is rotten. Only one pulls on your heartstrings and the other makes you want to spit it out.
Yeah.
This is so true.
See, that's the difference. And I think it's why we need a better distinction between how you use these memorable things, memorable elements. So like the part with Data and him having these memories visualized for us, or seeing the ship's museum and seeing Moriarty, like there's so many things, but they were integrated into the story in such an organic way that it didn't feel forced. So it didn't feel like a cheap device to like, oh, member, which I feel like the Star Wars sequel trilogy tried to do that a lot. Well, especially Rise of Skywalker, I think, was such an egregious thing where all of the ships that you may have seen across all the various forms of media in this weird last ditch effort, like going to I forget that movie, but yeah, all the ships
I hate that movie
that you may have seen. Oh, remember this ship? Like, I don't know all these ships. I don't know. It just looked so stupid trying to inject all of those things, like all the member berries all at once. And then when you look at what happened with the ship museum moment, so it was just such a touching moment between Seven and the new character, Jack Crusher. And the way they did it was just so beautiful. It was part of the story. It was natural. It didn't feel forced. And see, that's why I feel like there should be a distinction.
I agree with you, because you can also, like, there was so many cameos, like we talked about Moriarty. The one I forgot to mention was Ensign Rowe, who's not an ensign anymore. She was
Commander.
Commander Rowe now. I loved seeing her. I loved the fact that they had the Picard Rowe arc kind of solved, in this series. I thought that was really cool that they kind of, wrapped a bow around that. There are certain things that really kind of hits with you, like I said, like it did with me in Spot, or like there was one scene where Geordi like finally sees Data for the first time, and he's like, Data, and it's like you can see his like the eyes, like the acting, and like it's just you could see them, and them all being together around that table both times was so beautiful. It didn't feel forced. It felt something that was built up to those moments. And also with Picard too, I feel like Picard, I think that maybe that's one of the reasons I really didn't like the first couple episodes, was I felt like he still didn't have his stride. But by the end of the show, I felt like Patrick Stewart was Picard again. Like I was like, when he sat in that captain's chair, on this captain's chair, when Nerd Cookies is, when he said engaged, I was just like, oh my God, yes. Like it was so
Yeah.
powerful. But I think like maybe, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, because I actually haven't seen The Mandalorian, but I think that what I would consider member berries would be Luke coming back in Mandalorian season 1 after what they did to him in The Last Jedi. What do you guys think? Would you consider that member berries?
I called it member berries actually on Nerd Cookie stream when it came out. I said I didn't recognize that as Luke. However, Drunk 3PO had a very great response. It's like about how valuable it is to have those types of moments. I don't disagree with that. I only think it's perverse for the studio to take advantage of that and sell it back to you under a false premise. Whereas this one here is like, you understand this is the last hurrah. Like they're not trying to do this to milk you to keep coming back or anything. They're like saying, we're going out with a bang. Here's what we're doing. Here's the Bridge of the D. Here's their last adventure. And it's like an epilogue to their story that we got concluded with the TNG series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was so beautiful.
And I would say that as far as Luke, I did, because it was part of the story, it didn't feel like an egregious, just cheap ploy. That whole point of the story of that season was to find his kind, Grogu's kind, which was the Jedi. So it made sense with the narrative throughout the whole season. So it was part of that. But like, so for cheap member berries, I would say is the fact that the Mandalorian now rides around in an N1 starfighter, which doesn't make any sense at all. Like from a practical standpoint, they blew up his ship for no reason, and now he's got to be in this like Corvette, like one-seater. It doesn't make sense. But also, I think there was another one.
So dumb.
That
I haven't seen it, man. I don't know.
I know. But also like the droid from the Jedi Fallen Order game, B1.
Oh yeah, BB1 or whatever.
Yeah. They put him in there, and it's not like that served the story in any capacity. There's just like, oh yeah, I remember him from that other game. Like that's the only reason why it was in there, or the droids from the prequel movies of those little whatever those are called. I can't remember.
I forget the little.
Yeah, so they're just injected in there. It doesn't do anything other than to just make you, hey, I remember you from that other thing that had the brand Star Wars slapped on it. So again, it's like, how is it used? Is I guess
how it's
what's
used.
The motivation behind it is what I think is the important distinction there. And you can tell the love and care that went behind incorporating these elements. And as far as Picard, and just I love this.
Not Pip-Boy Gamer. We just went over 10 minutes of explaining to you what that was, and you got this out of that. I'm sorry, but that's hilarious. Okay. This scene was amazing. That's all I have to say about this.
The lights were on. It was beautiful. My goodness.
Yep. And then they turned them off again. And I was like, no.
And when he says, it was one of my favorite moments was when Picard says that, what does he say? Something about this is the most beautiful moment, sharing this. And it's the most important thing was the carpet.
Yeah.
I know the carpet.
I don't know how he says that.
Carpet. You're not wrong, man.
That was so good. One of my favorite moments from that.
I like the fact that they found this is something that I say props to the season 3 crew. So not many people know this, but Majel Barrett recorded hours of computer voice footage for Star Trek Online, and in this season 3 they didn't use any of that stuff. They pulled from other previous episodes to complete the series by bringing up the fact that Captain Picard and Picard says, "I'll take the field of motion," etc. But I liked at the end when they're leaving the bridge and Riker says, "I miss that voice."
I know. Oh my
And
God.
I
I had missed
know.
that voice
I thought it
so
was very,
much.
That's what I was
very
thinking.
beautiful done. And here's the other part too. Ironically enough, they have enough of her recordings, not just from Star Trek Online, but also Star Trek The Next Generation, Voyager, and Deep Space Nine. They could artificially recreate her voice as a computer voice for future Star Trek series. And I would strongly suggest that they pay royalties, of course, to her family to do it.
100%.
But that's what I would do if I
Yeah.
got in charge of a Star Trek show. I'd use that computer voice and be like, okay, who do I make at the checkout to? Which
Yeah.
Roddenberry is it?
100%. Like, it was so nice to hear her voice. I was just like, they really, like, with the limited budget that they had and with all the things that they did, they really pulled out all the stops, and that really meant a lot. It meant a lot.
Yeah.
DL, thank you for $1.99. It says, what Fox did to Firefly was a crime.
Yep.
Oof, that's true. And 201 Studios for $5 says Picard was waiting to die at the start of season 3. His arc was his revitalization. He was rock bottom at the beginning of season 3.
Much
That's
like Kirk
true.
much like Kirk was at the start of Wrath of Khan. He's an admiral in Starfleet. He's living at home alone. He's got his antiques, just like Picard. He doesn't know what he's doing with his life, but when he gets on board the Enterprise and they have to go rescue an old friend who happens to be the mother of his child, see if you catch any similarities going on here.
Yeah.
I agree, Grumpy. I agree.
She can be. I mean, that's the brilliance of it. She's spoken enough on film that a sophisticated AI can do it, and it's a little creepy because she plays an AI, and now her legacy is to become an AI.
Oh my God, isn't that so cool?
It's cool but weird, but at the same time, it's like it feels like something you would, because
Feels
Majel
right.
was such a huge fan of the series and loved getting involved and helping everybody. It feels like something that she would feel like my voice gets to live forever as something of comfort to people for Star Trek. And at the same time, anyone who wants to trust a computer, trust one that has her voice until they start doing something wrong.
That's true. Oh my God, what a fun stream. It really is so fun to talk about what we love versus what we hate. I really enjoy these kind of conversations.
Yeah, this was really just and when I said before, like, this needs to be studied by Hollywood because, but honestly, the formula is just really simple. And I love the arc, how this show turned out. You went into it, I went into it thinking the story was one thing. It was this conspiracy, it was this yeah, you thought there was this unfolding conspiracy, this mystery was the driving force of the show, but then it turned out to be a universal theme, a story that that resonates with everyone. A story about a father and a son, a mother and a son, family, finding family, reestablishing connection. These are elements that everyone can connect with in some way, and this is why it's really has connected with old and new fans. It's revitalized this show, and it's why I appreciated it so much, and it also made me excited for the future, which is what, if you're wanting to do that, if you're wanting to honor the past, if you want to take advantage of these well-known characters and well-known universe, but also like use it as a foundation to spearhead more projects, this is what the formula is. Honor the past and create good new characters that will want to see their stories continue. So it wasn't just that. It wasn't just member berries, and it wasn't just, I'm so happy to see the Enterprise D and everyone reunited. It was a mix of all these things. The story just kept me engaged, and even with the hiccups along the way, for the most part, it was an interesting, engaging story. And I enjoyed the new characters too, which is what this should be the formula. If you want people to follow the new characters, you should make them interesting and relatable. And I feel like they did that.
Yeah. And the other part too, they weren't dependent on the previous characters. They had their own stuff going on. And it was it was a very nurturing environment for that. It's and the other part too is neither one of the new characters were there to replace anything. At best, they were there to succeed, to follow up, to fill the role that is being left behind as opposed to being replaced. And I dug that because that was the other part of the theme, is that our children are a continuation of us, but not necessarily an evolution. Like there's something else. It's just adding on to it. It's not replacing. It's not supplanting. And the other theme, which I really appreciated, is that corruption comes from outside and penetrates within. It rarely does it build up or manifest randomly within the individual. It's something else. It's a byproduct or a result of something else. And that's what the Borg was doing. They were corrupting the younger generation by getting inside them without them realizing it as a sleeper, and then triggering them right when they had to. And it's only up to those that are, of a certain age where their brains are fully developed and they actually have experience under their belt that can actually pull people out of darkness, which is another Return of the Jedi theme.
Yes.
Is that, someone that is not corrupted has to take the action to save those that are corrupted. You don't just destroy them, you bring them out of darkness. And that's what we ended up getting a little bit.
That was beautiful with Picard and his son, when Picard assimilated himself, when he connected himself with that.
Yeah.
I love that line.
I cried like
Same.
a baby. That was so beautiful. And
I love that
the
line when
dialogue
he's
was
like,
amazing.
you wanted me to come back to the collective for so long that now I finally have a reason. Like, I was like, oh, like that was good writing. That was good writing.
The Queen didn't want him anymore, but when he was inside with Jack, he's like, listen, you shouldn't be here and I want to take you out, but if you want to stay, I will stay
I'll
here
stay
with
you.
And
Yeah.
it's like, dude,
That's beautiful.
it is. It's exactly what a father would
that's
do.
what he wanted. Like, as a son, that's all he wanted was his father, for him to acknowledge him
I'm
and to
tearing
be
up
like,
just
I'm
thinking
here
about
for you. Like, like that's the kind of character development that you need and you want. And and again, not Pip-Boy. You said that Picard died. No, he didn't die. He is very much alive, and he is going to be. He's just living out his life. He's not dead.
It's weird because what we're seeing is basically a copy of Picard in a positronic body, but I mean, it's still a copy of him. It's not.
I'm gonna pretend that didn't happen because I didn't watch those seasons.
The best part is that the show reconciles it as best as it can, so that you can actually get away with pretending that didn't happen until they bring up the positronics and the fact that when Picard plugs into the Borg and he can unplug himself, because again, one of the rules of Star Trek, which I was happy that they kept, is technically speaking, the Borg can't assimilate other androids. They couldn't assimilate Data.
Mm-hmm.
And they technically couldn't assimilate Picard because he had to maintain that connection in order to be with Jack. So it's something interesting out of that. It worked. But yeah,
that's very cool.
Great themes going out throughout the series. Again, it's a leaning tower of Pisa. By all intents and purposes, it
wasn't perfect by any means,
but it does, and it still looks beautiful as a result.
And I mean, you could hate on it. I mean, that's your prerogative. Like, go for it. Like I said, there's a lot of faults to be found. It's because it's not made from something it's not made from scratch, and it's not. It's flawed. It's very, very flawed.
I mean, I'm not here to convince you. That's good. This is just how I feel. It's you do you, and
exactly.
This is what appealed to me, and it was that's one bright spot.
You can't really ask for more.
The character choices on this contrived plot is what worked, because the character choices were authentic to the characters.
Mm-hmm.
I think this would have been I suspect that if Terry and crew had maybe 6 more months, when they didn't have to go right as soon as season 2 ended, that they had some time in between to actually get
more episodes,
and maybe more episodes, or at least maybe better chance to refine those episodes.
Bigger budget,
yes.
Larger budget. We wouldn't have had the contrivances that we had, but regardless, for what they pulled off in the short window they had, it has to be given its due, and it definitely earned it. Definitely. And no, it's not perfect. It's leaps and bounds ahead of what we've seen with this take of Star Trek in a long time. I would say it's a nice epilogue to TNG. It's about an average episode. I think there's people out there that could probably do a fan edit of this and make it into a nice 3-parter or something that would be very coherent.
I would certainly not say this is the best Star Trek that I've
No,
seen.
no.
You know what I'm saying? Like I mean, it's by far, it's not the best Star Trek I mean, my favorite's DS9, you know, that's why we started out talking about our favorite Star Trek. And
I mean, I don't
you
don't like Nemesis. I don't like Nemesis.
Yeah, I don't like
I have
I
my
like
problems with
Generation,
Voyager.
but a lot of people have problems with Generations, and
I have a lot of problems with Generation.
there you go.
I have issues with Voyager, even though I think B'Elanna Torres is one of my favorite engineer characters.
Yeah,
because of her complexity.
I feel like it's never been 100% for me across any fandom. You know, there's even in Star Wars, I don't like everything Star Wars just because Star Wars is slapped on it. I like a certain time period, or I like video games or certain books better than other things, and that's what I like personally. And I feel like Star Trek is just so varied in its stories that it really just resonates with different kinds of fans. But the universal themes of what makes Star Trek is kind of what makes it, you know, have this huge fandom to begin with. And
absolutely. Yeah. And 200 Watt Studios for $5 says the dad went in to buy smokes while his kids drove the car away and made something great while he was gone. Yeah. I mean, and I guess that's a cap on this stream right here. And do you guys have any final thoughts on this, Script Doctor? Final thoughts on Star Trek Picard?
No, I think it did what it needed to do. Rarely does a season go out on a high when it starts so low like this. So, I mean, they swung for the fences, and it wasn't a home run, but they definitely made a base or two, and that's progress that has to be showcased.
It's definitely one for the books. And what about you, Elaine? Final thoughts?
Yeah, just they honored these characters, they respected them, they told us an interesting, entertaining story, they introduced new characters that I liked or learned to like. And yeah, it's a very character driven story, which is a different take in Star Trek altogether, you know, apart from the episodic format that we're used to. So for this format, I thought they did how this should have been in this kind of style of storytelling is what they should have done. Kind of like this a extended movie, I guess. It's kind of, so they gave the fans what we were wanting to begin with from the series finally, and and I'm happy to have it. And you know, if it's not everyone's cup of tea, it's the same thing with like all of Star Trek. You know, Voyager isn't everyone's cup of tea. Same thing with DS9. There's these things
certainly not Enterprise. Enterprise, even the beginning theme, like everyone's like a lot of people hate the beginning theme of Enterprise. I was not one of those people. I actually really liked it.
Yeah, it's very different. Yeah.
It's been a long time.
Yeah. But when you treat this universe and when you treat the characters, you know, with respect, and you tell an entertaining story, you know, I think that's what's going to resonate with people. These universal themes that people love and will connect with. And they succeeded in that regard. And if they move forward, I would like to see the continued adventures of the Enterprise G. Well, I want to see a Worf series. I mean,
yes, give us a Worf series.
He wants to do one, and you know, if they did a Titan thing, I think that would be cool too. But you know, it has to be done by the right people. So if they continue on by putting the right people in charge, ones who are knowledgeable and passionate and care for this universe, then the future is bright for them. And if not, then they're gonna crash and burn.
See, there you go. Yeah. I used to sing along myself. I'm telling you, it was a catchy theme, man. It was a catchy theme. I really like that. And Braz Monkey, thank you so much for gifting 6 memberships to the chat, because you did 1 and then you did 5. So that's 6 memberships. Thank you so much for that. That is so kind of you. And Nerd Cookies, tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up next.
Yeah, you can find me here on YouTube at Nerd Cookies. I cover sci-fi and fantasy news and lore. Just dropped a video I was pretty excited about, the Dragons of Arrakis, a Dune lore video. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. You can also follow me on Twitter at Nerd Cookies to hear my random thoughts about things.
Links
Yeah,
are in the
that's it.
description. Nerd Cookies, I'm super excited to be talking to you soon about Dune 2. That's gonna come out
I know, I'm
soon.
excited. There's rumors that
Yes.
there's a teaser trailer dropping soon. Well, at least it's going to preview at CinemaCon this coming week. So we may get a leaked trailer. But there's also some rumors it's going to be previewed before Guardians of the Galaxy 3. May 5th is when that's coming out. So hopefully we'll
That-
get a trailer here soon.
That's
We can see what.
exciting. See, that's one of the things I'm super excited about is Dune. Like I want all things Dune. I'm very excited. And Nerd Cookies' channel. If you guys like Dune, you haven't found Nerd Cookies' channel, well, I don't know what you're doing with your life. You got to go watch the lore videos. It's so good. So good. I could just spend hours listening to Nerd Cookies talk about Dune lore. It's
Aw.
freaking amazing.
Dune, Tron, Stargate,
Yes.
Last Starfighter.
Oh my God. Speaking of which, by the way, like, what are your thoughts on Stargate being made remade or whatever they're doing? Oh God, I don't know what they're doing.
Follow-up
with Amazon.
series, they don't know.
I don't know.
Yeah,
I know.
once we know, it's very, very early. All we know right now is that they want to do something with it, but I
And
don't
all
know
we
what
know
form
is
it'll take.
Joseph Malazzi is not involved, and I'm very upset
Yeah,
about it.
he's not involved in conversations you get. I'm hoping they will rectify that situation.
I hope so.
But it seems very early at this stage, so hopefully they'll learn from Picard and give the fans what they want.
Yes, absolutely. And speaking of giving the fans what they want, Script Doctor, tell everyone where they can find you and what you got coming up next.
Oh, well, you can find me right here on YouTube. If I'm not playing some Conan or Valheim with you ladies and gents, I'm doing reviews. And I'm doing this new kind of discussion series with various people in the industry, colleagues and friends. And I've been dropping those every couple of weeks on my channel. One I did with Robert Burnett about fraudulent creators got some great response. I think it's almost at 20,000 views.
Ooh.
And the one I just dropped yesterday with Paul Chato about comedy is doing right well. It's well on its way to breaking 1,000, and it's a lot of fun. It's outside of the drama of normal entertainment news, so you actually get fun little geeky conversations. And I've got another one coming up in a few weeks with Paul Chato and Robert Meyer Burnett, where we're just talking gear porn and all the fun things that go on with tech and gadgets in film and television and all of that stuff. So that will be out as well. But if you want to see that early, it will be on my Patreon in a few days. So if you are interested in early access to that, plus script notes, writing tips, notes, opinings, and reviews of film and television in text form, you can sign up to my Patreon. And it also comes with discounts to my screenwriting consult packages. If you are an aspiring writer or an experienced one that just needs another set of eyes and doesn't want to break the bank getting that done, because a lot of private screenwriters and colleagues that I know of are doing their own things for like $800, which is like a lot of money. I don't charge anywhere near that amount. And
Oof, that's a lot of money. I just put Nerd Cookies' Patreon in the chat again. So if you guys want to sign up for that, that is also a thing. I will be putting that in the description as well. Man, I've had so much fun talking to you guys tonight. It's been just an absolute blast. And for you guys in the chat, tomorrow I'll be back with Midnight's Edge for Toxic Femininity at 8 Eastern. And then of course more Conan gaming at some point. So I'll be back. You will see me around. Now, if you guys want to go somewhere fun, a couple streams going on right now. We've got Simpcast on Chrissy Mayer's channel. You guys can go rate that. If you're interested in that content, Chrissy Mayer is great. If not, I don't know if Script Doctor, you're going live to video game some Conan or not. You can check out Script Doctor playing Conan. I'm not sure if I'm gonna go live yet. I gotta go do a bunch of stuff, but I'll have to decide and figure that out later. But okay, until next time, you guys. Until next time, see you later. Bye. Bye, everybody. Let me find a good outro. What am I gonna use? I don't know. We'll go with this one.
There's something really interesting with this character that I find fascinating, which is that he genuinely really does just want to do the right thing. But everywhere he goes, whether it's a new town or a new bar, people just kind of give him a hard time and they rag on him despite the fact that he has great intentions. I'm curious if that's comparable to this sort of world, this culture of toxic fandom, where like if you make a movie, especially if you make a superhero movie, like you have great intentions, but there are always going to be a small yet vocal group of people there can kind of just be toxic.
I understand what you're saying, but when it comes to fans, it is a fan's right to have whatever opinion they want to have. And people are going to be upset because, especially when you're talking about books or games, because you're never going to be the exact person who they had in their head or who they played on Witcher 3, for example.